So today, inshallah, we have a workshop on the Salah, which is the most important act of worship. And the Salah itself, as you all may know, is probably the biggest chapter of fiqh in fiqh itself, right? Entire books can be written on just the Salah. And it's a subject which we're not going to be able to exhaust today, considering also the conditions, all of the different arkan, whatever it may be that goes into a Salah. But we want to cover the main and most essential aspect of the Salah today, so that every one of our Salahs, inshallah, is firm, established, correct, no mistakes. And then after we do that, which will be like we'll go through a text. After we do that, we'll go over some of the questions that often come up. And I want every one of you, inshallah, to ask any question that comes up regarding the Salah. I brought my sources, so inshallah, there should be nothing that comes up that we can't figure out together. And it really is, fiqh is all about asking questions, right? So not just pure hypotheticals. I'll tell you a funny story. Imam Malik, Imam Malik is Imam Malik, right? The teacher of the madhab of the Maliki madhab. So he was once in a class setting, and a student asked him a question, hypothetical. So, what about this? What about this? What about this? And he had him beat. he had him take him out and flogged. Afterwards, he came and he apologized to him, and he said, I was just asking questions. I was just curious. He said, if it happened, if it occurs, then ask. Like when it occurs, then ask. Because for Imam Malik, it was taking away from the seriousness of the study to ask pure hypotheticals. Abu Hanifa on the other side was completely different. He would open up the floor to any question, such that at his time, there was a student who asked him, how do we pray on a flying carpet? At his time, right? 200 Hijri, right? How do we pray on a flying carpet? So you can imagine, he'd say, that's even worse, immediate, take him out. No, they figured out the question, they asked about it, they discussed it. And from that one masala, we know how to pray on planes. We know how to pray, so inshallah, we're on that manhaj today. You can ask any question, even if it seems silly, even if it seems like you could find the answer very easily. Part of mastering our fiqh and grounding our practice in this tradition is asking teachers and going back and forth, right? And building that connection and these discussions, right? Because it's very easy nowadays to just go look at ChatGPT or AI and figure out your answer, right? But you don't know where you're getting your answer from. It's very hard to navigate. So the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to cover parts of this text called Tuhfat al-Mubtadi, the beginner's gift. This is a really, really, really basic and easy primer on Hanafi fiqh. Now, why are we covering a text? Because not only is that the traditional way of studying the rules of fiqh, this is how you would do it at any time, right? In the past, you'd go and they'd read a small primer and you go through it. But also, traditionally, people would memorize these small primers. And if you don't memorize them, there are at least manuals you can always go back and check. So if I, built out these amazing slides and now I have to share my slides, and then you always have to go back to my slides. But if you have a text, you can just go back and read the list of conditions, the list of fara'id. So inshallah, we'll go through it. We're going to put a lot of emphasis on that which that can ruin your entire prayer, right? That's conditional to the prayer. And the adab and the makruhat, these like minor disliked actions or the small adab, we're going to go through them, but very quickly, just so you guys know what we're talking about. But the adab of salah is all about making the prayer as perfect as possible in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can imagine the door is very vast to that, right? Like what you wear, how you smell, everything, where you look, all of these different aspects. So this is a very nice text to read, and it's one that, inshallah, if we share the PDF with everyone, you can have. It's also available online. All right, any questions before we begin? So what's the first condition of salah? The first condition, when you want to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha qumtum ila salati, when you stand up to pray, what do you have to do? You have to make wudu. Faghsilu, right? You know the verse. So the entire chapter of wudu is usually the first thing we start with. We're not going to cover that today because that's a very big chapter as well. And I'm assuming that we all know how to make wudu. If any of you don't know, like if you have questions about wudu specifically, you can ask me after class or in the open Q&A. But for now, we're going to just skip the wudu because it includes, menses, tayammum, tahara, all types of water, wells. Like it's a huge chapter. Okay. So number one, though, that's the first condition. The second condition is purification from impurity, meaning you have to have a pure body, pure clothing, and a pure place of prayer. That is the second condition. So let's read this. Bismillah. Who can do this like traditionally? Anyone here know how to read Arabic well? Kind of? You want to try? Or I can read if you guys don't, if you guys are shy. So فصل في الطهارة من الخبث ويشترط طهارة بدن المصلي وثوبه ومكانه من كل نجاسة تمنع جواز الصلاة. So it is conditional. Who wants to read the English? Let's just make it more engaging. Who wants to read the English? Anyone? Bismillah. Oh, do you have the PDF? It's page 20. It's page 20. B 6.1. Okay, now let's go right into the preventive impurity. What is that? The next one, 6.2, sorry. Okay, great. So ideally you pray with no najasa on you whatsoever. You're completely pure. But as we all know, you're in different circumstances. That might be, one might get najasa on them in a billion different reasons, for a billion different reasons. So the question is, how much can you have on you, on your body, your clothing, your place of prayer while you're praying? It said 1 dirham. A dirham is like a little bit bigger than a quarter, or you guys have toonie, loonie, yeah. So they say like if you put your palm out, the amount of water that would remain, you kind of try to hold as much water as you can in a flat palm. That's the amount. So this larger dirham amount of heavy najasa. Heavy najasa is blood, urine, feces, wine, and then the urine of animals that you cannot eat. These are the major types of impurity, meaning that you want to avoid these as much as possible. Blood, especially, because blood, as we'll learn, breaks your wudu. It breaks your wudu and invalidates your wudu. But also, it's usually the one that people, usually get on themselves the most, right? Because you get a cut, right? Whatever it may be, you scrape yourself. So 1 dirham amount. Anything more than that, and your prayer breaks. Yes. Does any blood, yeah. Now that is for 1 dirham. So anyone on your clothing, if you have that amount, or if you have that amount and you gather it up, right? So there's different spots around you. You gather that up, it's that amount. You can't pray. Now they said for lighter najasa, and this is just yes. Yeah. So what do? So if we'll get to this, if one cannot find any other clothing, then they pray with najasa on them. So in that case, like let's say someone's in the middle of war, they have to pray. They can't just take off their clothing, they just pray with it. That's what it says. Someone's like on a plane and their baby just had an accident on them. They can't change they have no extra pair of clothes. What do? Right? Well, they pray and it would count, right? Because these are exceptions. But if there's no exception, then one cannot pray with that. Now, light impure substances are simply the urine of animals who you can eat. So why is this a dispensation? It's been made easier. Well, because at least for Bedouins, okay, I live in Mauritania, you're constantly dealing with animals. So you can imagine, right? You're milking the animal, you're pulling the animal. Their feces, their urine is going to usually gets everywhere, kind of, because they just go whenever. So because of that, you're allowed 1/4 of your clothing. So let's say, for example, your pants. You want to section these into 1/4. And these are rough generalizations. That you're allowed that amount of najasa on you. of this light impure substances. Otherwise, your prayer is broken. So meaning one could have dealt with an animal, right, that they can eat, a cow, a sheep, and maybe they got some, it splashed and it got on their clothing a little bit. They can still go pray. They don't have to change because of that, right? So it's very useful for shepherds and for people dealing with this thing. So really, really important. Now, a scholar said, what if you have this amount on your clothing and you're not like, you get a little bit on your shirt. Should you just pray with it or should you go wash it? What do you think? It's not the amount of a dirham. So you got a little bit of blood. You have like a dot of blood on your shirt. What should you do? Asking you guys. Okay, your prayer's not broken. Exactly, with ihsan. This is why Sheikh Adib Kallas, he was saying that he's like, one of his students asked him this question. He said, oh, yeah, my son, Yabni, just go wash it. Does it really harm you to go, just rinse it off and wash it a bit and then go back and pray? So now, ma'fu najasa. Now, we talked about the amount of impurity, which is excused as the size of a dirham. We talked about this, inshallah. Now, regarding the covering of nakedness. So we've got the first condition, which is wudu, tahara. The second condition, which is no najasa on clothing, your body, or your place of prayer. Third condition is covering one's nakedness. Want to continue, read? B7. Mhm. Good. So the nakedness of the man is from below his navel to below his knees. So it doesn't include the navel, but it goes beyond the entire kneecap. Okay. Now, why is this important? Because there's a discussion we're going to talk about in the end of class. What happens when your imam is praying and his shirt comes up? This happens all the time. And his pants might even be a bit like low too. What do? Does it break your prayer? So we're going to talk about exactly that question. But is it awra in the first place? Yes, it's awra. So awra is from the navel to below the knees. This cannot be shown intentionally. And if one uncovers this amount if it's uncovered for longer than 3 seconds, the prayer is invalidated. So they say, the amount of a hand's length, right? Because this is the tiniest little bits. Maybe someone's shirt, there's the tiniest little gap. But if there's a hand's length, then you can actually see it, and it's uncovered for more than 3 seconds, which is the amount of a rukun. A rukun is a pillar in prayer. So I go into ruku', 3 seconds, right? Subhanallah, 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 subhanallah. If I'm here and my awra is uncovered, the prayer is invalidated. Your prayer is invalidated. Now, if it's a flash second, right? So let's say the wind blows up there. For a woman, blows up her thobe, or a man his shirt, and it comes back immediately. It doesn't break the prayer. Or your son comes and jumps on your back and pulls up your shirt, and you just immediately pull it back down. That doesn't break your prayer, right? So 3 seconds. That's kind of the idea. Now, for a woman, it's her entire body except for the face, hands, and feet. Her entire body, face, hands, and feet. Meaning that if her hair is showing, we're talking about a hand's length though, her prayer is invalidated. So some people ask, what about a woman where there's the tiniest little strand of hair? Sometimes that can be very hard to stop. The tiniest little strand. That doesn't break their prayer. So a hand's length, right? A small amount that can be clearly seen for longer than 3 seconds. Longer than 3 seconds, that would break her salah. We're going to skip the idea of the slave woman because that's not applicable anymore. Now, the prayer is invalidated by the exposure of a quarter of the body part. So I said a hand's length, but a quarter of the body part of the nakedness, not less than this. So they say a quarter. This is for every single body part. So for the legs, it might be bigger than a hand's length. But the idea is that any part of your body, for a woman, for men, if a hand's length shows, that's going to be the bare minimum. There might be, let's say for your legs, there's a more exception. But in general, 1 hand's length, where you can kind of really see the awra, that would break the prayer. And that's the general principle I want to give. So it doesn't become, because people say, how do I measure a quarter, on the spot? right? So a quarter of the awrah, that's kind of hard. Like if it's my back, what's a quarter of my lower back? It's kind of, so the general idea is one hand's length. And if that shows for more than 3 seconds, your prayer is invalidated. Okay. Now he says here for the ear, a quarter of the ear, or shin is exposed, both of their prayers are invalidated. So in this case, right, the ear would be considered a body part. So her entire, if her ear is, would cut it out. If her ear shows, that would break her prayer. So ideally, you want to avoid showing any part in your prayer completely. You want to make sure that your prayer is completely covered. But as a general rule, we're talking about a quarter or a hand's length for your body, and for your head, for the ears, for women, that's one of the examples where it's more specific. Okay, any questions about this? I'm going through it quickly, I know, because I want to get to discussions. Yes? Even if it's more than a hand's length, if it's less than that amount, it doesn't matter. Okay, so that's why, let's say, like I said, one hair, a strand of hair, a little bit of hair for a woman's showing doesn't break her prayer. A man has a little hole in his jeans, that doesn't break his prayer. Yes. Uh-huh. That would include this. So that would be the same ruling. It would apply, meaning that she couldn't show you can't show her feet, yeah. So the different madhab, some of them, the Shafi'is, I believe you can't show your feet. Even there's opinion in the Hanafi madhab as well, that it's the top of the feet you can't show and the bottom of the hands. But this is the strongest opinion, which is in the book, right? So in the Hanafi madhab. So yeah, what I'm giving here are the general principles. And that's why you might see something which is slightly different in a different madhab. That's okay, right? Ideally, we want to go beyond this book and learn a lot more. But I want to have discussions regarding these questions. And I want us to think about this prayer in a way that we can just make sure that we're not having any prayers being broken. We don't know. And then secondly, that we can try to understand a bit how the fuqaha were thinking. Okay, good. So now the times of prayer. Times of prayer. All right, who wants to read through this quickly for us so we can get through this? This is another condition of the prayer, is that you pray at its time. Let's have a man, let's switch it up. Let's switch up the readers, make it more engaging. Someone on this side. Just C1 till C2.
Time of the prayer is from the true dawn, which is the horizontal whiteness on the horizon, till the rising of the sun. The Dhuhr prayer is from the sun's zenith until shadow reaches twice its light, in addition to its shadow at midday. The Asr prayer is from the shadow reaching twice its light until sunset. The time of Makrooh prayer is from sunset until the disappearance of the white twilight, which follows the red twilight. And the Isha prayer is from the disappearance of the white twilight until the dawn.
Okay, now there are disagreements between madhab regarding this. So it's my advice, your app, look it up. Your local masjid, they have the prayer times, just follow that, because you're not going to go look at the sun and the night. But very quickly, true dawn. What's true dawn? What's false dawn? And what's true dawn? Well, yes, go ahead. Yes, right. So false dawn is when the sun, it will start to it reflects on the sublunar particles before it actually reaches close to the horizon. So you'll see the rays of the sun kind of going up like this. Whereas true dawn, it spreads across the horizon. That's Fajr. That's Fajr. Dhuhr prayer is when the zenith. So as soon as there's barely any shadow, the sun is right above you. As soon as it moves, Dhuhr starts until it is double your length, right? So until it's double your length, twice your length, until your shadow is twice your length. And you can measure this, you can try it if you want, for fun. And then Asr is from the beginning end of Dhuhr until sunset. Sunset until Isha is when the white twilight disappears. So there's a redness, there's a red twilight kind of after Maghrib, there's still some redness in the sky. That will disappear and there'll still be some whiteness in the sky. And that white twilight will also disappear, and then Isha comes in until dawn again. That's very just a simple breakdown, and we follow our calculations, so we don't need to dive into this, inshallah. You have to pray. If you pray before your prayer time begins, your salah doesn't count. Now, there's one masala I want to discuss in relation to this. If you pray Fajr, this is the only prayer that this matters. If you pray Fajr and the time goes out while you're in prayer, your prayer is invalidated. Your prayer is invalidated. So if you're praying Fajr, you're doing a long prayer, mashallah, khushua, and then the time goes out, the sun comes up. Your prayer is invalidated. Every other salah, if you're praying in it and the time goes out, the prayer is still valid. Okay, so if you're praying Dhuhr and you've done a rak'ah and you've started, whatever it may be, or even if you just started, the prayer time goes out, you caught it, you got it. That's for every prayer time except for Fajr. Why? Because, yes, go ahead. It doesn't count. Doesn't count. You have to remake it, yes. Yes, exactly. So the time right after Fajr is a prohibited time of prayer. You cannot pray in this time. Right after Fajr until the sun rises a bit in the sky. Right? So that small period of time, it's like 30 minutes, you actually cannot pray in it. It's sinful to pray in that time, and your prayer is invalidated. Right? So your Fajr prayer will be broken. So always try to pray your Fajr on time with some time before it goes out. Don't wait the last 5 minutes. Yes. There's 3. Yeah, there's 3. I'll do that right now, sure. There's 3 prayer times that you can't pray. The first is right after Fajr. The second is right before Dhuhr. So 5 minutes before Dhuhr. Like right when the sun is going from, the sun's always moving. So right when it's right before it's the zenith until it moves, this small amount of time, it's around 5 minutes, is prohibited to pray. You cannot pray in this time. So you don't do sunnahs, you don't do anything. You just sit and wait until the adhan goes off. Then once the adhan goes on, then you do your sunnahs. A lot of people make this mistake, actually. They'll do a bunch of sunnahs. Like in the musalla, they'll come, they'll start praying. But the adhan hasn't gone off for dhuhr. You can't pray. You wait till the adhan goes off, and then you do as many sunnahs as you want, because the dhuhr time is long, so you have time. Okay? That's number 1. That's number 2. The third, yes. So in the Shafi'i madhab, you can pray Tahiyyat al-Masjid. You can. In the Hanafi madhab, you can't. But ideally, you would just wait, right? You would wait unless you're in the musalla for, you're very early, and then it wouldn't matter anyways. So if you can, to join between the madhab, just avoid this 5 minutes. Just avoid those 5 minutes. As soon as Dhuhr comes in, you pray. Now there's an exception for Jum'ah as well. They said for Jum'ah, you can pray your Tahiyyat al-Masjid because it's Jum'ah and the prayer time is right away. So there's no long delay. Dhuhr can be prayed at any time, kind of in the prayer time. Jum'ah is usually a schedule, as we all know. The final time is late Asr. Late Asr. So Asr prayer time, when the sun starts to get very orange, such that you can look at this. This is actually how they say in the books. When you can look at the sun and it not hurt your eyes, this time right before Maghrib, 25 minutes before Maghrib, is also heavily disliked. You cannot pray anything in that prayer time except for Asr itself. You can pray the Asr of that prayer time itself because it is within the prayer time. So you can still pray Asr, but it's disliked to do so. You should never delay your Asr until that time. Always pray your Asr early. So I think we're gonna talk about this in the recommended acts of the prayer. Okay, great. Now the 4th condition is facing the Qibla. Facing the direction of prayer is a condition except in the case of one in fear, such as from an enemy or a predatory animal. Likewise, an ill person who does not have anyone to face him towards the direction of the prayer, his direction of the prayer is the direction that he is able to face. The direction of prayer of the one who is unsure of it is the direction he estimates. So someone who is, like the Mujahideen, they're fighting, there's an enemy, there's a wild beast. In this case, and they have to pray, they can't delay their prayer, they don't have time. They pray wherever they can, wherever they can be safe. Right? So they might not want to turn their back to the enemy, so they can even pray towards the enemy. The Qibla is completely off, but they're in a state of necessity. Likewise, someone who is so sick and they can't have anyone move them, right? Usually you can have someone move you, help you turn your bed. let's say you're so sick and there's no one there in bed, may Allah protect us, then what do? You just pray, right? And then you don't have to make it up. You do not have to make it up. Now, if someone is not sure, so they don't know where the Qibla is, and you don't have your phone, you can't ask anyone, what do? You do ijtihad. You become your own faqih. So you go, how do you do this? How would you do this? How would you do this? How would you go about this? If someone said, figure out the Qibla, you don't have your phone, and you ask a couple people and they're like, what? No, you can't use my phone. What do you do? Okay, right? So you would look for markers. You can look at the sun. You can, if the campus, on the north side of the campus, right? So okay, it's northeast, so north, turn right. Right? You do your own ijtihad, your own estimate. Try to find the Qibla, which is northeast, as much as possible, as close to as possible, and then you pray. And if you find out after your prayer that you're facing the wrong way, your prayer is still valid. Yes. If you're in the prayer, you just turn mid of prayer. So if you're in the prayer and someone says, brother, you're completely, then what do? You pray. I did this, I went to another MSA, I was at York, and we had to pray. So we prayed Asr, and it was like this way. Then another group of people came and said Maghrib, and they were praying this way. I said, what happened? Like, which way? Which way? You can't tell. Like pointing at something. Which way should we be praying? Okay. So that's the fourth pillar. Fifth pillar, intention, niyyah. As for the intention, its meaning is a desire to perform the action. So intention doesn't mean that you say, nawaitu salat al-dhuhr fardan lillahi ta'ala. You don't have to do that. It's good to mention your intention, but it's simply just your heart being very firm about what you're praying. So you can't just start to pray, Allahu Akbar. You say, is it dhuhr? It's dhuhr. No, that doesn't count. You have to just start again and say, okay, I know what I'm praying dhuhr, Allahu Akbar. Right? So we're going to talk about the end of class though, OCD and doubt. What do you do in those cases? Because that's very, very common. You have to tell them. You have to tell them to turn. That's a good question, right? You have to show them the right way. So if they're a guy, you could just turn them. Say, brother, this is the wrong qibla. You just turn them. Or you could tell the sister. You say, sister, you're actually praying south. Sister, turn this way. It happens, right? As for the intention, okay. Should be with the heart, articulating with the tongue is desirable. So it's with your heart. You know what you are saying, what you're praying. Okay. It is necessary to specify in the obligation on the obligatory and necessary prayers as opposed to the recommended and optional prayers for which a general intention for prayer suffices. So what are obligatory prayers? Dhuhr, Asr, Fajr. What are mandatory prayers? Witr, in the Hanafi madhab. So these prayers, you have to be very specific. But for a nafil prayer, you have to say the 4 nafil after, before the Asr, the 2 after. You don't have to say that. You can just say nawaitu salah. Right? You intend to pray. Bismillah. That's it. Because they're nafil. Allah made it easy for us. All right. Who wants to read C3? C3. Someone else. Let's just mix that up a bit. Yes, go ahead. Okay, so the last condition is takbir, is entering into the prayer. Now, what is a condition? We talk about what is a condition of prayer. A condition of prayer is that which the prayer cannot even start if it's not there. If it's gone, a condition is if it's not there, the prayer is not there. But if it's there, the prayer might not occur. Right? So you have wudu, it doesn't mean you're praying. But if you don't have wudu, you can't even start prayer. Prayer doesn't even count, aslan. They say the takbir, Allahu Akbar, entering into the prayer, some say it's a condition, some say it is a integral, some say it is it's a condition, but it resembles an integral. Because it's not actually like part of the prayer, but it's what enters you into the prayer. It's a discussion. Now the integrals of prayer, so we talked about conditions, now on integrals. What are the integrals of prayer? Integrals of prayer is that which makes up the prayer itself. The prayer is not considered a prayer without these things. Meaning that if you don't do one of these things without an excuse, the prayer it's not even considered a prayer. So you have all the conditions, you start, but you miss one of these integrals, the prayer is not a prayer. It doesn't count. It's broken immediately without one of these things. And if you were to leave one of these out intentionally, it would also break your prayer. There are only seven of these. Okay, or usually it's 6, but we added one. So standing for the one who is able for obligatory and necessary prayers. This is a pillar. Standing in the prayer is a rukun, which means that if you just sit down for no reason for the fajr, you're not even praying. It doesn't count. Aslan. The prayer is broken. Right? Now, if you are sick, there's obviously an excuse. Reciting a verse in 2 units, rak'ahs of the obligatory prayer, and all units of the witr and optional prayers. What does this mean? Recitation. Reciting Quran has to happen in the prayer. That's a pillar. The amount we're going to look at. But the pillar of the prayer is that you have to recite Quran. So someone converts to Islam, they don't know any Quran, they have to read it from a mushaf. They can't just pray and say nothing. Right? They have to recite. Bowing, ruku', sujood, and the final sitting. The final sitting is a rukun. So where you do the tashahhud, the sequence, and exiting the prayer with your own actions. So how would you exit the prayer? Well, that's not one of your own actions. So someone comes up, let's say like you're praying, this is a big discussion in the fiqh books, but let's say you're praying, and someone comes up and knocks you out. Right? Another example, someone comes up and you're wearing a khuf. They pull out your khuf. It's just like devious kids. Right? What do you do? What do you do? Technically, your prayer would be invalidated because you didn't leave the prayer with an action of your own. Right? So you have to leave the prayer with an action of your own. That's the rukun. Now, how do you leave the prayer? Is it with a salam? Is it with just screaming? The prayer was valid. If you do your tashahhud and you just scream, technically, your prayer is complete. You left the prayer with an action of your own, but you didn't do it properly. We're going to talk about you're missing one of the wajibat, and you actually should you should remake the prayer, right? But we're talking about at any action. So sometimes some people forget to do the salam. They just say, like maybe they're dozing off and sleeping on Hanafi in the prayer. If you sleep in the prayer, it doesn't break the prayer, as long as you maintain your posture. So you could just be praying, and then you're in your tashahhud, and you wake up and you just get up and you walk away. Technically, your prayer is valid, right? Because you left with your own action. Same thing with, if you sleep prostrating, as long as you don't like slump over, your prayer is valid, inshallah, because you are maintaining posture. Okay. Obviously, you're not snoring or anything like that. That breaks your prayer. Okay. Now, the necessary actions of prayer. So we got the arkan. So we got the conditions, we got the arkan. Everything clear so far, inshallah? The arkan is just basically what is prayer. If someone asks you, what is the prayer? You would mention these things. The tashahhud, the sitting, the final sitting, and then leaving the prayer with your own actions. It's very, very simple. These have to be in every prayer. Okay. Let's continue. No questions? Okay. Yes. Okay. It's required, but it's not a rukun. If you don't do it, you should make up your prayer, but you don't have to. Your prayer is technically valid. Yeah, so the takbir, we'll just do that now. The takbir, that's going to come in probably the adab and the sunnahs. But yeah, it's wajib to do the takbir, Allahu Akbar, and you're entering into the prayer. They're going to say there are different actually ways you can say it. Allahu Aziz, Allahu Akbar, there's different, Allahu Kabir. If you did that, your prayer would technically be valid, but it's makrooh to do that, right? You should follow So if they just did Allahu Akbar, your prayer is valid. But you should raise your hands. We're going to see this in the sunnahs, inshallah. Well, if you don't do takbir, it doesn't count. So if you don't say anything, yeah, if you just come and you just, it doesn't count. And also in the Hanafis, right, like you just say Allahu Akbar and you have to be standing. And the Malikis too, like if you were to say Allahu Akbar in ruku', your prayer is broken, right? So you have to enter into the prayer standing. Enter into the prayer standing. So yeah. Well, they don't. So I don't know. I can't speak about exactly what they experience. But the masala is that if they are in prayer, then they would, number one, always try to be led by someone else. And then if they can be led by someone else. Why? Because then the other person is reading for them. Secondly, if they have to pray by themselves, then they're deaf, so they can read it. Can they not read? Okay. So they do is if they cannot, this is a good message. If they cannot learn the Fatiha whatsoever, then they would just stand quietly. And there's difference of agreement, do they even pray? But yeah, they would pray, they just stand quietly. If they can't learn at all. Otherwise, they would have to learn to the best of their ability the Fatiha and then 3 ayahs, 3 short ayahs. So I don't know any deaf people myself, but I know that there are some who can speak to a certain degree and some who can learn and some can. So if they could learn how to read the Fatiha within themselves, at least memorize the Fatiha, even if they know how, I don't know, they don't know how it sounds, but they know the internal language, whatever it may be. I don't know. I don't know exactly how they would understand this, but they would have to learn and memorize the Fatiha so that they could say it in their minds as they're praying. And if they can't do that whatsoever, like they cannot learn at all, then they would just stand and do nothing. But I think that's usually not the case. Usually they can learn. Wallahu a'lam. Wallahu a'lam. That's not my expertise, but, and you can look that up maybe, but the general ruling is that, yeah, they have to learn the best of their ability. Yes. Good question, mashallah. That's an amazing question. I'm laughing because it's that's a manly question, mashallah. Any harm whatsoever that would come up in prayer, you have to break it. You have to break it, actually. You don't have the option to say, Ya Allah, I'm just going to die. No, you have to stop. If there's a scorpion you're afraid of, if your daughter is going to plug a wet a wire into the socket, whatever it may be, you have to stop.
I mean, attacking, you're like, I'm going to say this.
You cannot. You cannot. And the examples of the Sahaba where that happened, understand this, that they didn't do this intentionally. Meaning that when they were praying, they were in such a state in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they would get shot by arrows, they wouldn't even notice. Right? That's where some of the Sahaba, they'd have their leg amputated while praying. Right? Because they would be so focused they wouldn't even feel the pain. In these cases, when they died and whatnot, they would just pray and they wouldn't feel it. But someone like you see someone just looking you right in the eye, you can't just be like, Ya Allah. Yes. Yeah, exactly. You'd run out of the building. Yeah. If you are scared for your life, you have to change your position. Yes. No. Because that could be anywhere. If you are in danger or someone that you are responsible for taking care of is in danger. So someone, other grown adult, if they're screaming out, yeah, you probably should go help them. And if they seem that they actually, you're the only one who can help them, you actually have to go. But if it's in general though, right, someone else is hurt or someone, you don't have to break your right, yes. So that, usually cases like that are forms of resistance. That's not out of necessity though. I don't think the cops would have shot them on the spot in Australia. I don't think so. So in forms like that, that's allowed because it's resistance. It's forms of resistance, right? Yeah. The idea of there is that you're protesting and they're trying to intimidate you. So you're praying, you're saying, I'm not going to stop praying just because you're intimidating me. Right? If they genuinely started shooting and they could not move, that's another situation where if you're just surrounded and they're going to kill you anyways, then yeah, what are you going to do anyways? you're either praying or you're running at them getting shot, right? So in this case, you would just pray, and then but in situations where you can't, you have an option to get out of the situation, you have to get out of the situation. Good question. Yeah. So we're going to talk about what invalidates the prayer. Excessive movement invalidates the prayer. So yeah, if your son's there and you just like grab him, or you shuffle and grab him, that's fine. But you can't just, in the middle of prayer, come pick up the baby, bring him back, give him a bottle and keep praying. Like, no, doesn't work. Yeah, can't do that. That would break the prayer. Yeah. So you could say Subhanallah. You could say, um, like you could try to make a small gesture or like that, you know. Any small gestures are allowed. You just can't do anything that if someone saw you, they would think they're probably not in prayer, right? So excessive movement, right? Picking up a whole baby, like pointing at the baby and tell him like stop, like or yelling or talking. This all breaks the prayer. Mm. So you'd want to avoid that. You'd want to avoid that. And what you do instead is you just speed up your prayer. So the idea of something being very common, there's lots of craziness that's common, but that's not correct. But what I want to say is that slight movements, so maybe they're like you're in ruku' and you pick them up, but anything where you have to kind of really break out of the posture of the prayer, you want to avoid that completely. And because the Sharia, there's a dispensation for speeding up the prayer, then really it's hard to imagine scenarios where you have to pick them up. Like where you have to pick them up in that moment, right? So like, maybe if you're like in Taraweeh, and the baby's like screaming his head off, in that case, like you'd want to avoid it. I'd say avoid it because it would be considered a major movement that would break the prayer. Maybe another madhab is easier with this. I know the Maliki madhab is a lot easier when it comes to movements in prayer. But like if it's really easy where you can just kind of grab the baby, but if maybe it's like 2 or 1.5, but if it's like a newborn and you have to go all the way down and pick up the baby and bring it up, that's excessive movement. Yeah, you can turn it off. Ideally, also, if your baby is screaming in prayer, you shouldn't pray. Like if they're freaking out, you should break your prayer. If it's a nafil prayer, like tarawih, these things, jama'ah, and it's a fard prayer, then you have to kind of, and then we're going to talk about the imam should be aware. If the imam hears the baby screaming bloody murder, he should rush his prayer, speed his prayer up. The Prophet himself did this. Yeah. So the Prophet in the hadith, he heard the baby crying in the back and he sped up the prayer, right? Because he knew that, so the prayer, if you're doing the prayer to its bare minimum, it can be very quick, right? The Fatiha, you read it fast, you do 3 ayahs. Allah you go very fast, and your prayer is valid. So you're taking into consideration the baby. That's you have to do that. So this is like the general adab of salah, and having this knowledge allows one to facilitate ease for the people in the congregants in the prayer. For the imam, if he hears it, he speeds it up. If the woman is cramped, she can break her prayer, she can speed it up, right? Just so you don't have to do things that would otherwise break the prayer necessarily or be very uncomfortable to maintain your prayer. And people they're just ignorant, so they just don't. Like they'll hear a baby screaming and then they'll just start with Baqarah, like they don't care. Or same thing for Maghrib prayer. Maghrib prayer, as we'll see, is supposed to be very short, ideally shorter than the other prayers, and you're supposed to read shorter prayers, especially in Ramadan. Especially in Ramadan, you read shorter surahs. Why? Because people want to eat. So why are you going to read the entire Surah Hujurat. Read a short surah. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. يلا مشي, let people go eat. Right? So this is an ignorance that can kind of come from imams. I don't know where they come. I don't know where they, like it comes from ignorance, but then they, they're how they justify it doesn't make sense. So it's very common though. Yeah.
You should not go both your hands. Like for example, you're standing, like if you need to reach for something, just do it with one hand, the other hand.
Yeah. So maintaining your posture as much as possible. That's the idea. Yeah. So they say like 3 large movements, not of just your hand, but of your arm would be considered a major movement. So yeah, maybe like I said, if you can lean down slightly and pick up the baby, that would be fine. But to break your entire posture and pick up the baby, you're breaking everything. Like you're breaking everything, and that's a problem. So you want to avoid that, inshallah. Okay. All right. Now the necessary actions of prayer. These are the wajibat. Yes. Yeah. The major forms of najasa are urine, feces, blood, and the urine of animals that you cannot eat, and alcohol. These 5. And throw up. Throw up too. Throw up is a major form of najasa as well. I don't know why he didn't mention that. Throw up is a form of najasa. Yeah. And throw up will break your wudu. If you throw up for more than like you completely throw up, that breaks your wudu. Okay. Faslun fi wajibat as-salah. Now we're on the necessary actions of prayer. What are these wajibat? These are the obligatory actions of your salah, which means that there are 2 things to know about these. If you intentionally skip one of these or leave it out, your prayer is broken. But if you forgetfully miss one of these, you can fix it with a sujood sahu, a forgetful prostration. So that's how this works. The arkan, if you pray a prayer and you don't do any sujood whatsoever, you can do 1,000, you can't do a sujood afterwards and it counts. The prayer is gone. But for the wajibat, if you miss one forgetfully, not intentionally, you can fix the prayer. Remember, intentionally breaks the salah. That's really important. Okay. How much do we have left? Okay, so what we're gonna do, because it's 3 o'clock, we have 2 hours. We're gonna just get through this, and then we'll jump to the disliked, and then inshallah we'll go to some discussion, which I want to go through today. Make sure we go through them. Okay. Reciting the Fatiha, and other than the last 2 units of an obligatory prayer. So what does this mean? You have to recite the Fatiha in the first 2 rakahs. In the first 2 rakahs of every prayer, you have to recite the Fatiha. If you forget, salah if you forget, the salah is fine. You have to do it sujood sahwi. If you do it intentionally, you don't read this, salah is batil, doesn't count. Adding a chapter, another surah, that which is equivalent to it, such as a long verse or 3 short verses. The 3 short verses or an ayah that's longer than 3 short verses. What's an ayah that's longer than 3 short verses? Many of them, right? Ayat ad-dain, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu awfu bil uqudi. That's the ayah beginning of Ma'idah. Any of these longer ayahs, they count. So you read a surah Fatiha and you read a surah or an ayah or 3 short ayahs with it. That's mandatory. If you forget that, you do sujood sahu. If you intentionally leave it out, your prayer is invalidated. Observing the order with a repeated action in the unit. So what is that? What is the repeated actions in unit? Sujood. The 2 sujoods. You can't just do 2 sujoods and skip the sitting. Waiting, the pause in between. You have to sit down before you stand back up again. You just stand back up again. You don't sit down. All of these things, you have to do them in order. You cannot do the sujood before the ruku' and whatnot. The first sitting, the qa'atat al-ula. So the first sitting, what's that? In dhuhr, you sit the first time, you do the tashahhud, you sit again. That final sitting, remember, is a rukn. Very important. The first one is a wajib, which means that if you miss that, you forget, you just stand back up, you can fix it with 2 sujood sahw. Okay, exiting the prayer with the word salam. The qunut of witr, the dua of qunut in witr, which we're not going to cover too much about witr today, but there's a dua that you read after the 3rd rak'ah, after you do the takbir, before you do ruku'. Specifying the first 2 units from the obligatory prayer for recitation, meaning that the first 2 units of prayer you have to recite in those first 2 units. You cannot recite, instead of reciting in the first 2 units, recite in the second 2 units. You can't do that. Stillness when bowing and prostration. So what is the stillness? In every single motion in the salah, you have to maintain it for 3 seconds. Minimum 3 seconds. So you go into ruku', you have to be here for 3 seconds. Even if you don't do Subhana Rabbiyal Azim at all, you have to be there for 3 seconds. So if you do just here, like that, prayer doesn't count, right? Unless you did it forgetfully. Loud and silent recitation in their places. So for Fajr, you recite loudly. What is recitation loudly? It is to recite such that you can hear yourself. Doesn't mean that the world has to hear you. You can hear yourself. And others can hear you next to you. That's loud recitation. Quiet recitation is simply that you can hear yourself. So you can hear yourself, that's quiet. Loud is that you can hear yourself, and someone next to you can also hear you. I mention this because some people might recite like very, very quietly, and if people next to them can't hear them, the prayer doesn't count. Or they might recite too loud, right? They're trying to like project their voice too much. You don't need to do that. As long as the person next to you can hear you, that's enough. Okay. Silence of the follower at the time of the Imam's recitation. Now in the Hanafi madhab, the Shafi'i madhab is different, and the Maliki madhab is different as well. So you should look in those madhabs. But the Shafi'i madhab, you have to recite the Fatiha, and Maliki, you have to recite the Fatiha as well. But while the Imam is reciting in the Hanafi madhab, you don't say anything. You actually can't. It's Makrooh, tahrima. You just sit there, you stand there quietly, reflecting on either the verses being recited, or if it's in Dhuhr, for example, even in Dhuhr, you just reflect on Allah, on your prayer. You don't recite though, at all. Really important to know that. A lot of people don't know that, but that's important. It's wajib. Okay, the prostration of forgetfulness due to leaving of a necessary act. The prostration of forgetfulness itself is mandatory. So, I'll ask you a question. What happens if you forget something in prayer and then you forget to do the prostration? Do you have to make it up? Or you just do nothing?
You're still in the position of prayer. You're still sitting, like leave your salah, then you remember you can.
You can do it right away? Okay. What if you get up and you walk around? It's valid, but you should remake it in the prayer time. So while you're in Dhuhr time and you forget, you should remake your prayer. Now, if it goes into Asr time, you leave it and your prayer is valid. You don't make it up. It's not a qada, but you should make it up during the prayer time. Okay? So sujood as-sahw is wajib, yes. Good. So if the Imam himself forgets completely, then and then you remind them, you say you made a mistake. You actually the detail here is whether or not he believes he made a mistake or not. So if he is absolutely certain that he did not make any mistake, then they don't do anything. His prayer is valid, and you base it off of his opinion, because he's the Imam, and the Imam is responsible for the prayer. Now, if he believes you and he said he made this mistake, then yeah, you should remake the prayer in the prayer time. In the prayer time, it follows that. But this happens, right? Like sometimes you are there and the person says, you missed a rak'ah. And he says, no, there's no way I missed a rak'ah. I did all 4. He says, no, you did 3. In this case, you follow the Imam, because the Imam is dhamin, al-imamu dhamin, right? He is the one who, his prayer will cover up the gaps of the congregants, even if their prayer is, making a mistake. Now, if you are absolutely certain that the Imam did something which invalidates the prayer, then you yourself should make up that prayer by yourself. if you're absolutely certain. Like you're not, as there's no doubt, but you're absolutely certain. Like you did something that broke your prayer, completely invalidated it, then you would make it up yourself, right? Like for example, we'll talk about some examples coming up, inshallah. But in general, any mistakes that the imam makes during the prayer, you don't have to. He's responsible for it. So you don't do your own sujood sahu, and if they're minor mistakes, it doesn't affect your prayer. And if they're the wajib, then if he does sujood sahu, it counts for everyone. Also, mistakes that you make in the prayer behind an imam are also forgiven, as long as you don't do anything that breaks the prayer. So let's say like you forget something in your prayer, if the imam is the one that you rely on, because his prayer will cover up your mistakes that you made. Okay, the recommended acts of prayer. So before we get to here, does anyone have any questions regarding the wajibat? This is what I really want to focus on, because the prayer will be broken if you don't hold on to these. If you have najasa on you? No, it doesn't break your wudu at all. If you have najasa on you, no. You just wash it off, yeah. It doesn't break your wudu. Yes. So yes, in the last two, it is sunnah to read the Fatiha, and only the Fatiha. You don't read another surah with it. Yes, so in the Shafi'i madhab, you have to read the Fatiha, I believe. The Maliki madhab as well. In the Hanafi madhab, you have to recite. You should recite the Fatiha. That's the strongest opinion. But if you did tasbih as well, that counts. If you just said Subhanallah, 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 that counts. That's Ibn Abbas's opinion. Yes. That's fine. So you would, if you read the surah first, you said, then the Fatiha. So if you go into prayer and you forget the Fatiha and you start reading a surah, then you would recite this Fatiha and then you would recite a surah again. Another surah again, to make sure you have the order. Yeah. Now, with reading in the second ayah, in the last two rak'ahs and the third rak'ah of Maghrib, you should always recite the Fatiha. Just be accustomed to reciting the Fatiha, because that is the strongest opinion, and that's the opinion in the Shafi'i and the Maliki opinion schools as well. So you should follow that which is kind of most encompassing at all times. Okay. Now, okay. So we're gonna skip now the sunnahs of the prayer. I'm not skipping this because they're not important. I'm skipping them so that we can focus on everything that would break the prayer, that would change your entire prayer from being accepted. Then we'll come back to the sunnahs and the recommended acts and the makruhat. I find that that's better when it comes to understanding. So the prayer is valid, but he should remake it. It's still valid. So at the end of the day, it's still valid. This is why, like in Jum'ah, they say you would if this happened, you wouldn't tell everyone, because it's just difficult. There's so many people. Yeah. So Jum'ah, you're always trying to just make sure people are not confused. So you wouldn't. Also, another thing we'll talk about, you shouldn't read an ayah of sajda in the Jum'ah salah. Why not? Because people are going to be confused, right? They're just doing a random sajda and they don't know what you read and they're joining late. You're trying to make it always as easy and as clear for everyone behind you. That's the imam. The imam is trying to make the prayer as simple for everyone behind him. He doesn't want to make it more difficult. He doesn't want to give people doubt, right? We're dealing with other people's salah. You have to make it as clear as possible. The same thing for reading other, like riwayat and whatnot, right? Some people don't even know what the qira'at are. So you get up and you say, alif, lam, re. right? تلك آيات الكتاب, or يغشي الليل النهار, تذكرون. Like you're reading any of the, right, that's okay. The prayer is valid. But as an imam, the wisdom is that you wouldn't do this in a big jama'ah because you're going to confuse people. People might think their prayer is invalid. They might break their prayer, right? So unless you're with your own jama'ah and they're comfortable, they know what you're going to read or you explained before. But all these are wisdoms that have to be taken into consideration. Yes?
Well, you're reciting ayah, you have to make sajda, but you forget to make sajda.
Hanafi madhab, we have a really nice excuse for this. So in the Hanafi madhab, the ruku' and sujood of the salah itself counts for the sujood tilawah. As long as you go into ruku' close after you recited the verse. So let's say I read an ayah of sajda, and then I just say Allahu Akbar, and I forgot. This ruku' counts. It counts for the sujood. So in the Hanafi madhab, you don't technically even have to do any sujood tilawah, but you should. Okay. That's a good ruling to know, just because it helps you in situations. You should. Yeah, you should. Yeah. Okay, we have some questions in the chat. Is a rukn less than 3 seconds and do sujood sahu? My prayer is valid. Yes, right. So if you don't spend enough time on any of your, so that would be breaking one of the wajibat. So you don't spend enough time in ruku', right? In that case, what do? You do sujood sahu. You realize you did it for half a second, you do sujood sahu. Okay. All right. I was gonna also, if someone has a musalla, this is the tradition of learning fiqh is that you demonstrate the prayer. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. So pray as you see me pray. So he didn't have a timer in the Quran. And so the sunnah is that you learn how to pray by watching someone pray. So I was thinking we'll do a demonstration. I'll just do a quick prayer, a fake prayer. Obviously, I'm not gonna, just so you can see. Then we can ask any questions that come up. So if someone has a musalla, we'll do that after we finish everything else. Okay. The desirable actions. So you have sunnah and you have mustahabbat. We're skipping these for right now. We're going to come back, inshallah, if we have time. The invalidators of the prayer. This is what I want to get to. As for the invalidators of the prayer, any kind of speech that's not from the salah, hello, hi, even like a weird sound, like weird, like ooh, breaks your prayer, right? Unless you make a sound, unless you're crying, or you make a sound that you cannot keep down because unless you sneeze or you cough, or you have to, like, someone has to burp, for example, or you are reading an ayah of Quran that is talking about the hellfire, right? So someone starts to, let's say someone moans in prayer, because they're thinking about the hellfire, that doesn't break their prayer, as long as it doesn't get too loud and distracting. Yes.
What? They accidentally say no.
That would break their prayer. No, that actually happens, and imams they'll fall into this. Yeah. So for in the standing, just to open up with dua, the scholars will say that, so in a fard prayer, you can't do this. In a fard prayer, you can't. It'd break the prayer. And in nafil prayer, there is, especially in nafil prayer, it's open. So you can make a dua and you can make it out loud. But ideally, you would leave the dua for the periods of dua that are in the prayer. So such as dua is usually done in sujood, or it's in qunut, or fajr. This is a qunut and fajr for the Shafi'is, right? You recite out loudly. So that's one case where you could do dua. But otherwise, you wouldn't. Especially in fard prayers in the Hanafi, you don't want to do anything besides like the absolute necessary actions and the sunnah actions. So you don't want to add any other du'as that are not mentioned, especially standing. So like, because they say that delaying a rukun also breaks the prayer. Delaying a rukun too much will break a prayer. So someone like you're in lower prayer and you pray your Fatiha, you read your surah. You now have to do ruku' and you just delay it doing dua, that would break your prayer because it's a rukun. It's not like an easy thing for fara'id. When it comes to nawafil, yeah, you spend as long as you want. Mm. So these things, if they're dua and they are speech that is part of that's been revealed, like narrated, so duas or ameen and these whatnot, they don't break the prayer. But in a fard's prayer, you don't want to do duas. That could break the prayer. So in the nawafil prayer, these are fine. So we're talking about speech. We're talking about anything that is not either in a fard's prayer and delays a rukn, that would break the prayer, or to that which is not from du'as or things that are revealed. So such like if you're at the end, you're saying, Allahumma aghfir li wa li waliday, Rabbirhamhuma kama rabbayani saghira. These du'as that narrate from the Prophet, these don't break the prayer. But if someone said, for example, hello, wa alaikum assalam, yarhamukallah, right, to someone else, connecting to someone else, right, all of these things would break the prayer. Mm. You could, but in fard prayers, try not to say anything. It's makruh tahriman. And nafil prayers, the du'as and everything is a lot more relaxed. So that's like what I'm trying to get at is like, there might be these questions we have to parse the different furu', but when it comes to fard prayers, just avoid saying anything behind the imam at all, except for ameen. And your dua istiftah, right? Subhanakallah wa hamdik, tabarak ismuk ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk. Or the Hanafis, the Shafi'is, وجهت وجهي للذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا وما أنا من المشركين. Yes, we're gonna jump around. Yes, go ahead. Sorry. Oh, okay. I'll get to it. Yeah. I don't remember. I don't remember. Oh, saying no. Saying no.
Made a mistake. Someone behind corrected them off, but they wrong put in years of risk. That's where they lost it. Now you lost them.
No, that would break the prayer. That would break the prayer. In the Hanafi madhab, that would break the prayer. Maybe there's another aqwal in the Hanbali madhab, but in the Hanafi madhab, that would break the prayer. You cannot communicate with another. And the only time you can communicate is if there's a reason and you can say subhanallah, like subhanallah in your prayer. For example, if your parents are calling you, if they're calling you and they know that they would be extremely angry if you do not come, even in the middle of a prayer, you have to break your prayer actually. But if you know that they're reasonable, then you'd say subhanallah to let them know. Subhanallah. Yeah. Okay. But they said that's interesting. Like if the parents were kind of unreasonable and they would get angry even if you were praying. وَإِيَّاكُمْ. Then yes, Sulaiman Yusuf. Go ahead.
Commonly what you would hear in Fard Salah, like the ones that are commonly read out loud.
You have a question?
Yeah. Whenever the Imam says أَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ بِقَادِرٍ عَلَى أَنْ يُحْيِيَ الْمَوْتَى or ayahs the like, you'll commonly hear people in the back say bala or other terms. I just wanted to know, does that affect or have any issues with the prayer? Does it disrupt it at any point?
So that would not break the prayer because they are revealed. These are things that are revealed, that are narrated from the Prophet ﷺ in relation to surahs in the prayer. So as I mentioned, dua or anything revealed for the prayer doesn't break the prayer, right? But delaying a rukun would. So this is not delaying a rukun. And making excess dua in a fard prayer should be avoided, right? But in nafil prayer, it doesn't matter. In nafil prayer, you can read aloud, you can extend it, you can You can spend 4 hours standing up, doesn't matter. And in these cases, it wouldn't break the prayer. So none of these things would break the prayer, but delaying a rukun would, so doing lots of dua in a fard prayer, for example, or communicating with others, as the others mentioned, like saying naam, or saying what, or saying no, these things would break the prayer. So to give salutations deliberately, or to reply to salutations with the tongue. So, wa alaikum assalam. A person praying correctly, correcting other than his imam. So how does this work? If someone is praying and there's 2 jama'ahs, and the other jama'ah makes a mistake and you correct them in the other prayer, that breaks the prayer. Why? Because you're connecting. Any type of connection with the outer world would break the prayer, right? So besides what I mentioned, so talking to others, correcting others outside of the prayer, these things will break the salah. A person praying correctly starting in other than the one that he is in. So starting in other, what does this mean? شروع في غير التي هو فيها. So starting a prayer that he's not in. So obviously having a different intention than Imam, or starting another prayer that you're not that you're not in. So the Imam is praying Dhuhr, you start Asr. Your prayer is invalidated. Moaning, groaning, crying audibly due to pain or calamity, not if it is due to thinking of the next world. So even out of pain, this would break the prayer. If you're crying, someone's like crying out of pain, right? Like, that would break the prayer. That would break the prayer. Yes. Yeah, so the question is, can you pray with 2 different intentions? And he's seen this happen. So they said that in nafil prayers, you could pray different intentions for nafils prayers. So tarawih, you want to pray different nafil prayer, not tarawih, you can do that. You cannot. In the Hanafi madhab, you cannot. In the Shafi'i madhab, you can. In the Shafi'i madhab, not in the Hanafi madhab. Hanafi madhab, you cannot build that which is stronger upon that which is weaker. Right? So you could pray a nafil prayer behind someone praying dhuhr, but you already prayed your dhuhr. You want to pray with the jama'ah again. You pray a nafil prayer while they pray dhuhr. That's fine. Something weaker on something stronger. You cannot build something stronger on something weaker. In the Shafi'i madhab, you can. So you could take a rukhsah in that case. But for fard prayers, you cannot. So you can never have someone praying dhuhr as the imam and someone praying asr as a follower. Yes. Yeah, you can have 2 jama'ahs at the same time, especially if the main jama'ah happened. How does this happen? If you're in a mosque, the mosque will have one main jama'ah. After that, there are multiple jama'ahs. And we see this actually. Ideally, you try to gather as many people as possible within each jama'ah. But you see this, right? Someone came late, they started their own jama'ah. Another person came, he has his friends, he starts his own jama'ah. It's easy. After the main jama'ah happened, right? Otherwise, it's makrooh to pray before the main jama'ah occurs. But in MSAs or in community centers, the idea is not even there in the first place because there's no main jama'ah, there's no real main imam. Yes, Sulaiman. Oh, okay. You didn't have a question, I think. Okay. No worries. Okay, so let's get through these. Clearing the throat without reason. So you have no reason, you just breaks your prayer. Replying to someone who has sneezed. To respond to speech, even if it be with an invocation, such as if someone is informed of that which pleases them by saying Alhamdulillah, right? Or that which saddens them by saying La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. It does not invalidate the prayer if he intends by informing someone else that he is praying. So he said dhikr in the prayer to inform someone else that you're praying, it doesn't invalidate it, as well as dhikr in the prayer that has been revealed for specific ayat. So أَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ بِقَادِرٍ عَلَىٰ أَن يُحْيِيَ الْمَوْتَى, and you say bala, that doesn't break the prayer. But if someone says La hawla wa quwwata illa billah, they said my cat just died, You say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. That would break your prayer. Right? That would break your prayer because you're responding to someone else from speech that's not part of the salah itself. Reading from a copy of the Quran. So reading from a copy of the Quran in the Hanafi method breaks your prayer. Why? Because you are connecting to something outside. This is also the case for reading things on the walls. To be careful in the Hanafi method. This is why they say it's Makrooh to put up like, the adhkar. They have like those posters that said adhkar after salah. That should not be in front of the musallin. Why? Because if they read it in prayer, it would break their prayer. And it's very natural that you might just read it. We're not talking about just with the eyes, but with the tongue, right? So if you're just looking at something, but if you recite, you say, like you look at the wall and it says like Alhamdulillah, like whatever, that would break your prayer. So you have to be careful about this. In the Shafi'i madhab, you can read from the mushaf; it doesn't break your prayer. But Hanafi madhab, you can't even read from the mushaf, so you take it rukhsah. Remember, when it comes to salah and any of the actions of worship, you can take rukhas, these dispensations, when needed. But this is very important. You should only take a rukhsah if there is difficulty, and if you can maintain the conditions of salah or that action according to the madhab that you are taking from. Because otherwise you have something called talfiq. Talfiq is like you're just mix matching between madhab. So it's not valid in the Hanafi madhab and it's not valid in the Shafi'i madhab. So what are you praying? It's Frankenstein prayer, and those are invalid. So in the Shafi'i madhab, for example, you have to recite the basmalah. In the Hanafis, you don't. It's a sunnah. So you don't recite the basmalah, but then you do something that would invalidate the Hanafi prayer by reading. So you're mixing between two things. In either madhab, it doesn't count. So how does it work? So if you're going to take a rukhsah, you have to make sure that within that mode, within that action, that you follow all of the conditions of that madhab. It's very important to know. Yes?
So is that necessary? Or vice versa?
Hanafi prayers, we have two opinions aslan. We have the most expansive madhab. So we can pray at the Shafi'i time, that's the opinion of Abu Hanifa, or you can pray at the normal Hanafi prayer, which is of Imam Muhammad. We have two riwayah, so it's fine. In general, yeah. So it also doesn't mean you have to follow the madhab of the Imam that you're following. That doesn't, you can be Shafi'i behind a Hanafi, behind a Maliki, whatever it may be. But we're talking about if you're going to take a rukhsah, a dispensation from another madhab, that is very consequential, right? That might break your salah, but you're taking that opinion, you have to maintain that madhab. It's just a very important thing. Supplicating with that which is possible to ask from people. What does this mean? This means to make dua from that which is not narrated. This is not really very accurate, but it means to make dua for that which has not been revealed. So if there's, Allahumma, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana. Technically, that would include money and whatever, right? Dunya hasana, right? But if you were to say, oh Allah, I really want a Rolex. Oh Allah, please let me marry fulana by name. That breaks your prayer. Oh Allah, please let me marry, or not marry, get this car, get this job. All of that breaks your salah. Yes. It breaks your prayer. Unless it has been revealed. So they have to be, and there are many du'as that have been revealed from the Prophet ﷺ. So like you could, it might be, I have to double check. I'm not a scholar in all the madahib. I just know a couple things here or there, so I can double check. But in the Hanafi madhab, you would have to rely on what the Prophet ﷺ himself says. So for example, there are du'as for, Allahumma, zuqni dhurriya hasana wa zawja tayyiba wa amalan mutaqabbala. Maybe there are many different, there's thousands of adiyah that the Prophet ﷺ said that you could say in the salah, but not your own wording, right? So, and not mentioning anyone specific. Yes. Prayer would be invalidated, yes. Well, let's look for another madhab. Let's look for the Shafi'i madhab and take a rukhsah. Try to always find a way out. Allah loves that for His servant, this is actually a hadith, who comes with an excuse on the Day of Judgment, right? Meaning that they made mistakes, but they actually tried their best to make it work. So all the different madahib, they're there for us, not so that we're dogmatic and we just say, I'm Hanafi, I never want to touch a Shafi'i, I never want to look at a Shafi'i. No, you should be able to open up and take from different madahib, especially in cases like this where like, how many salahs was I making this dua in, right? So Shafi'i madhab, I don't know, but let's check. And inshallah, I'll get back to you, or if you look it up, I think there's more leeway, inshallah. Good question. So the heart we don't consider the heart at all. Allah considers the heart, but the prayer does not consider the heart. So we're only talking about what you literally, the verbal expressions. So in your heart, you could say, oh Allah, in your heart, you're asking Allah for your cat, for a cat. But in your mouth, you're not saying anything. That's fine. It's fine. We're talking about what you say. Yes.
I respond by saying anything? But someone says an after in the prayer, he's like, you can do this. That's like first.
You shouldn't. You shouldn't. So let's say you wouldn't break the prayer because it's a small movement. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. Unless, the only time you should do that is if like maybe they're asking you for something or they're really begging you. You could just do something like that. Like I'm clearly praying, but you should not. Ideally, you don't have any movements that are connected with anyone outside of the prayer unless there's a need. The Maliki method, they're a lot more relaxed on this. You can do lots of movements. So like, as long as you're not like completely turning around and your prayer is valid and you can touch and you can even point. And I remember my teacher in Mauritania, he was Maliki. I was reading my lesson on my lawh. And I had two different things I was reading. I didn't know what to read. So I was like reading it and he wanted me to read something else. So he said, come here like this. You did this. Then I came to him and I held up the mushaf and he said, in the prayer. I came back and prayed. I was like, Ajib, he told me in the middle of prayer. It's fine. In the Maliki madhab, that's fine. In the Hanafi madhab, that would break your prayer. Yes.
And then same with the reading from heard, and I don't know if this is that for part prayer you can't.
So in the Hanafi madhab, you can't. It doesn't change, regardless. And then for du'as and whatnot, it also would not change. So you could not use you could not start making du'as in another language out like verbally in your prayer. It would still break the prayer. So you just want to try to like either do it with your heart, make dua with your heart, or learn the duas and avoiding these things. But there are other opinions. There might be other madhahib, like I said. So this is kind of like a basic. I know it's a very rushed course, so there's a lot of gaps maybe that you're already discovering. You're saying this primer is not enough. Yeah, it's not enough. That's why you'd study a whole book, right? You'd study a whole book on Hanafi. This entire book is just about the salah, the entire thing, and on just the salah, the entire thing. So there's a lot here that we're not covering, and that's by design because we're just trying to get the foundations. And inshallah, with further study, we can learn and master our salah and answer all of these questions that come up. Yes. So the limitations are you cannot make dua in that which is, it could be another language, could be English, but it can only be that which has been transmitted in our tradition. It cannot be what they say kalamun nas, just like the speech of other people. So you have to, that's the only condition. So whether that's in Arabic or in English, it's fine, but it has to be transmitted dua in the salah if you're actually making that expression. Your heart doesn't matter. And outside of prayer, the door is open, right? So make dua right after the prayer. And other madhab might have different opinions. So like I said, look in the other madhab. If you follow Shafi'i, look to the Shafi'i. If you follow Maliki, look to the Maliki, and whatnot. Okay. Yes. Reading from the Mus'haf. Let's say the Imam is not reading from it, but someone else that's praying behind him is looking at it, for example, like 13 to 8 or something, and he's correcting the Imam while looking at it. So does that break the prayer? So if he's following the Shafi'i madhab, fine. Okay. Yeah, anyone, right? Anyone who does this in their prayer breaks the prayer, whether it's the Imam or the follower. Anyone. He corrects what he's looking at. He corrects. That doesn't break. How would that break the prayer? That doesn't matter. Anyone can correct the Imam. Right? So someone outside the prayer could correct the Imam in the prayer. The idea is you yourself cannot communicate with someone outside the prayer. But if you hear, so like you can't say correcting this from the prayer or from someone in a different prayer. While you're in prayer, you can't correct someone outside of the prayer. And these ideas. But if you're in the prayer and someone tells you something, that doesn't affect you. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because they're outside of the prayer aslan. Like for them, they have no rulings. They can say whatever they want. So you can't stop what you hear. Right? Like you're praying and someone just tells you made a mistake. Are you supposed to just ignore them? Well, he's outside of the prayer. How do you know he's outside of the prayer aslan? You just can't communicate back. You can't communicate back. This is why I said if someone is like, for example, reciting Quran outside, you don't do sujood tilawa for someone outside. Right? Because now you have a connection to someone outside. Like you're acting upon someone else with an extra action. But if you're just reading Quran and someone corrects you, or someone turns you the correct qibla, that doesn't break your prayer.
Is that an exception? Say out loud.
So aslan, I don't know the other madhab, and I would say look in the other madhab. Because in the Hanafi madhab, it's makrooh for women to pray together in groups. Ask someone else. I look in another madhab. I don't know the Shafi'i madhab that well, or the Maliki madhab. But so because of that, in the Hanafi madhab, aslan, you shouldn't pray together. It's makrooh tahriman. It's actually sinful if women pray together. So no. I'm not telling you what to follow. I'm just saying that's why I don't know. So ask another madhab. And in this time and age, I would say follow if someone is struggling to kind of find connection with their ibadah and to do ibadah in a group, and everyone they're just praying, then you can take a rukhsah and pray with them. Right? So that's like the Sharia is open. It's not don't be trapped in the box, unless someone is well studied and they already have their ibadah, then they can then they wouldn't pray with a group of women, right? But you can take a rukhsah, yeah. Um, I don't think it matters whether it's with Maharam. I can double check though. I don't think it matters though. So inshallah, I'll look that up as a question, whether it matters between Maharam. I think it's connected to, can you correct them? And so I'll look that up, inshallah. I'll look it up. That's a good question. I don't know. All right, so that he sleeps while reciting in the unit. and it's bowing, prostration likewise, if he's overcome by sleep in either of them and he does not repeat. So what I mean by this, we said that sleep itself does not break the prayer, but to sleep in a way that would break your posture would break the prayer. Right? So just dozing off does not break your prayer, but like if you were to completely slump over, which is what we mean by deep sleep here, then that would break the salah. Eating, that he walks during the prayer the distance of 2 rows in one go. So to walk, to move at all, distance of 2 rows would break your salah. Slight movements forward or back, 1 step forward, like what happens if the Imam breaks his wudu? You have to step forward. It doesn't break your prayer. But to walk a lot would break your prayer. Right. Right. Okay. And one go. There's more details here, but we're getting the main picture. Eating and drinking, even in small amounts, even if that which is between the teeth is the size of a chickpea. So I said that like any eating or drinking whatsoever, unless it's like smaller than a chickpea. So it means like, let's say someone has like a tiny something stuck in their tooth, and like in the prayer, it gets done loose, and they swallow it. That doesn't break their prayer. But chewing gum, drinking water, whatever it may be, all of that breaks your salah. Excessive movement, such as tying a turban, wearing trousers, wrapping a waistcloth, also such as scratching the body in one integral with the hand 3 times consecutively, raising the hand each time. So I said that excessive movement is what? Excessive movement is either you move your entire limb, and you move your entire limb in one integral. So standing in ruku' 3 times. So we're not saying, so one thing like that doesn't break your prayer. Right? If someone's walking in front of you, you can stop them. But you do this 3 times while standing, or 3 while here, and you scratch like that. Your whole arm moves. One of like little scratches like this doesn't matter, but you move your whole arm. You see this actually a lot. People in prayer, and they'll fix their kufi, and they'll do it again. Right? That breaks if you do it 3 times in one standing, that would break your prayer. Or they come and they like fix their pants. That would break your salah. If you do it 3 times in one rukun, we're talking about one rukun, right? So if you do one little thing and then you do ruku' and then you do another little thing, that doesn't break your prayer. We're talking about in one rukun, you do 3 movements like this, or it's excessive, like tying a turban, walking, anything that would make someone think, oh, he's not in prayer, right? Like actually checking your phone, scrolling, right? Taking a picture. All these things. Sitting down for no reason. In salah, you just sit down. That's invalidates your prayer. Unless you are in a nafil prayer. In a nafil prayer, if you get tired, you can sit down for no reason. If you're tired, you can sit down. And you can pray nafil prayers sitting down. You can pray nafil prayers lying down. And you get half the reward if you sit down, and 1/4 of the reward if you lie down. There's actually like one of the secrets of the awliya is that they would pray their qiyam al-layl in bed. Right? So you're in bed, and maybe your family or one spouse is there. They're always complaining that you're praying all night. You're just in prayer and you're just knocking out rakats, right? They have no idea. That's a secret. Okay.
Then like I crack my beard once. You have to like 10 seconds, do it again. And after like 10 seconds again, I do it again. That breaks my beard.
That would break your prayer if you're moving your whole arm. So if you're here and you just do no, you can't. Yeah, you'd have to move your whole arm. But like I said, little things like this, but to move your whole arm, these things would break your prayer if you do it 3 times. So you have to kind of be careful about movement while praying. Yes, we have lots of questions. Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't break your prayer. Doesn't break prayer. And you can do that without 3. Like that would be considered one motion, right? Usually, right? Here and you just turn here and you tuck it in. That's one motion. It's not like every single part is a motion. It's one whole movement. It might break your salah, and that's why you'd have to just get a pin, like make sure it doesn't. That's different. If someone breaks one of your conditions in the prayer, you can bring it back as many times, right? Like if someone comes and they like the kid or someone pulls up your shirt and you pull it back. Ideally, if it's happening a lot, then you would want to get the kid away, or you want to, like Make it such that you're not moving so much. But in those cases, it would be fine. And ideally, even then, you would want to just go into the next rukun. So like, let's say you're standing and then it happens once or twice. Before you have to do it again, go into ruku' and then come back up. And now that you're in a new rukun, you can have another 3. So you get 3 per. So you can kind of be smart about that to avoid doing excess in one rukun. And fard prayer? No, it's not an excuse. It has to be a medical reason. Like, you literally cannot stand up. Yeah. Oh. Saad, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Sidi.
Alaikum salam.
I have a question about moving in prayer. So let's say in fard, is there a difference between fard and nafal? Like let's say a spot in the saf in front of you just empties out. Are you supposed to fill it in, like move ahead to fill it in? And is there a difference between doing that in nafal versus fard?
Regardless, it doesn't matter, but you should always fill up the next row. Always fill up the next row if there's an empty space. And this is why they said that movement in the musalla, he mentioned a condition here, it's at one go. Meaning you could technically, right, like between rak'ahs, move multiple times, right? So in one rak'ah you move, and another rak'ah you move. What you do, stand up and then you move. You can move a lot actually. And they'll even make it cases where in the musalla itself you can move around a lot, completely move around, because you're establishing the prayer. So while you're in prayer, someone, let's say an open space opens up there and there's no one else, you can walk all the way there. Because you're in the musalla, it's as if you're in the domain of prayer. So they let it go. It's not like you're walking outside, then you come, right? So that's kind of the idea, is that in the musalla itself, movement is forgiven in general. It's made a lot easier. Yes. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
What if you're in the musalla, it's not clear related, but you notice that other people are having issues with it? It's better if you make the way clear for us.
No. So ideally, little movements you can. We said little movements, but if they see that you're praying, then you just speed up your prayer. Always go for speeding up your prayer than doing a bunch of extra movement. Because speeding up the prayer, you can maintain the prayer completely without it breaking. Lots of movements, you start to get into a risky area. So it's always just being cautious about your movements. Very careful. Yes.
Sometimes you have to start 2 rows back, so there's only like 1 row behind the imam to pray behind them. If a new person comes in and they see that there's no space, are they allowed to push the imam a row forward so that another row can come in behind?
The imam can move forward, yeah. So yeah, the imam can move forward, people can move back in the prayer. That's totally fine. Now, in terms of like rows, what's the difference? The distance between rows? There can be huge distances between rows as long as there's not like a pathway where people are walking in between the rows. There's like a row here, and then there's like people are just walking, right? Or it's such a large gap that like it could be a road. A car could drive through for no reason, right? No, the rows should be tighter, and they should be tighter together. Additionally, men and women can't be on the same row, right? They cannot be in the same row without a full barrier between them, right? So, likewise, if a woman walks in front of a man, it breaks his prayer. Yes.
So when we're dividing the land, let's say like there's a walkway in the balcony.
You would want it to be a walkway, a full walkway where like multiple people could walk through. You don't want it to be just like one musalla spot.
Yeah.
That's fine, yeah. But if it's just like one spot, 1 or 2 spots, then that would not be acceptable. Yes. Okay, yes. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get to everyone. Yeah, go ahead. if you have to, so yeah, you shouldn't walk in front of anyone, but if you have to join the group, you could. But that wouldn't break the prayer aslan. Walking in front of someone else doesn't break their prayer, as long as it's between the same gender. So a man could walk in front of a woman, but a woman cannot walk in front of a man. That would break his prayer. If a man's praying and a woman walks, as we mentioned, like there's no barrier, and she walks right here, prayer is broken. Yes, sir. You can, yes. So all the way, they said that levels up, as long as they can see the imam, they can pray, or they can see the imam, they can pray. So as long as they can see the imam, they can pray, or they can maintain a connection to the imams. This is why they said like through hearing, they can hear the imam or see the imam. So they can hear or see the imam. So not just seeing, sorry. They can hear or see. And in that case, levels up doesn't matter. So it could be like here and then 50 feet up. That doesn't matter. We're talking about distance between. So it's even in the haram, right? Like the lines should not be, and usually it's fine, right? Because they're always tight, just tight, right? So there should not be just a huge walkway people are walking through, and then the next line starts. This happens sometimes in Turkey, for example, like the people be praying, and then there's like a walkway in the mosque. But it's a very large walkway. So you have everyone walking through and they're talking everything, and then there's two groups. You want to be careful about that, right? They should all be kind of connected. Yes. Then we'll do that. It doesn't break his wudu, it breaks his salah. Yeah, it would still break his salah. The idea is you could just, huh? Maybe another madhab. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not um, an encyclopedia. So I'm here for the Hanafi madhab and the basics that are usually covered between all of madhab, but all of these furu', these are called furu'ah, right? These different smaller questions that come up, we have to go through a book, and then if it's a different madhab, you have to ask someone else. Yeah, that's fine. Any type of barrier, just a marker that would break the place that he's praying from and the woman. Yeah, yeah.
Is there a difference between whether the woman should pray to the right or completely behind?
No, she can pray next to him. She can pray next to him. And anytime you pray, whether it's a man or a woman, and this is for mahram, right? So mahram woman or a wife. Wives are not mahram, you know that, right? They're not mahrams, but right? Mahrams are people you can't marry. Wives are not mahram. But so wives and mahrams can be, and vice versa with one's husband, can be next to them. And the idea is just as anyone else is praying, the imam just has to be in front of them. The heels have to be in front. The heels have to be in front. And it doesn't have to be a whole amount, just a little bit. And it doesn't matter, this is when they're standing. So it doesn't matter, let's say like in sujood, maybe let's say someone is married to like a the woman is very, very tall and he's very, very short. Let's say example. Such that when they sit down, her knees are actually in front of his knees. When they sit down, that would not break the prayer. What matters is the heels when they stand up. That's a hypothetical, but we're Hanafis. Okay, go ahead. So let's say they say that Hajj is impossible on one madhab. That's number one. Hajj and Umrah, they say is impossible on one madhab. Not Umrah, but Hajj. Meaning that in these cases, you're going to look at the other madhab aslan. Because it's hard to follow one madhab anywhere. I mean, the Shafi'is, right? They have just the touching, any touch breaks their wudu. They have to take rukhsas and Hajj. It's impossible, right? So in that case, you look at the other madhab and see what they can say, what they say. Inshallah, it's easy. Yeah. I mean, it's not an obligation, but it's highly recommended to always put a marker. Their prayer would break. If it's a man, it doesn't break the prayer. If it's a woman, it would. And we're talking about men for women. So woman and woman doesn't break their prayer. You shouldn't walk in front of them, right? You shouldn't. It's sinful to walk in. It's intentionally walk in front of them. You shouldn't do that. They should stop you. But if they did, it doesn't break your prayer. They can stop you. You put your arm out and you stop them. And they actually said actually the hadith is faqatilu or faqtulu, meaning that the original ruling was that like if someone walked in front of you in prayer, you kill them. Like stop them, and if they do it again, kill them. They understand this to say that you can be harsh while blocking them, right? So like you can be like, right? It doesn't have to be super gentle because you're praying, right? Praying. Yes, Saad.
Yeah, CD, just a follow-up for the question for the scenario where a lady passes, I guess, in front of a guy when he's praying. Is there a consideration if there's like a satar in front, or is it just like even if there is something like blocking in front, and she passes, I guess, in front of that, would that still break the guy's prayer, or is it just like if she's passing but there's nothing in front?
So we're talking about she passes in the place that he prays. So
Okay.
ideally that could be extended. So that's why he should put a block. I'm forgetting the exact word. What's the word? Huh? Sutra? Yeah, exactly. So sutra or sutra in front of him, so that if she were to walk in that space, that would break the prayer, and outside of that would not break the prayer. And that's why
Okay,
that's the sunnah.
So if there is a sutra
Okay.
and she walks, I guess, in front of the sutra, that would still be fine. Like the prayer wouldn't be
Yeah, because
invalidated.
that's the point of the sutra, is to show
Okay.
where you're praying, and then everything else doesn't matter. Okay. So Bismillah. What else? Okay, so that is all of everything that breaks the prayer. Like I said, I knew it would become discussion, and this is why asking all your questions is important. So we're going to skip this now, and what I want you to do, inshallah, I want everyone to go and read the sunan and the mustahabat, and then the makruhat. Remember, these are things that are not going to break the prayer if you leave them out, and they're not going to break the prayer if you do them. So the sunan and mustahabat, you try to do all of those. And the makruhat, try to avoid those as much as possible. But inshallah, they should be clearly understood. And if anyone has a question, you can email me directly, or I have if you have my number, you could text me, or you have my social media, whatever. You can contact me and ask a question if it's not clear. But those should be pretty understandable based off of just common sense, inshallah. And like I said, this is just a basic seminar. Entire courses are done just on the salah. So it's kind of ambitious to do everything in one day. Yes. I shared the PDF with the management. So yeah. So inshallah, share it to everyone, so everyone has the PDF. And go from there. Okay. My sites only use parts of this. So it's a whole book, and the book actually has commentary as well. The second half of the book has commentary, so you can read the commentary. It's a good book. I like this book a lot. By the author, I believe, himself, Mullah. Okay, so now the last hour. Any questions about everything else we covered before we go into the last discussions? Yes.
Someone was praying, I said, here. I walked like there.
Mhm.
They can't really sit themselves though.
Yeah, that's fine. Talking about in the place of prayer. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah, no problem. But if you have OCD, then you don't. So if you have doubt, we're going to talk about this right now, actually. Then you don't do that. So questions for discussion. How I want to do this is I'm going to just bring up a masala, and I want you guys to think about it. discuss within your groups, and then we'll just have a conversation, and then we'll come up with the real answer. These are big places of discussion for fiqh, and they're very common today. So, okay, question first? Yes, correct. Exactly. Perfect. Great. Yes. Yeah. Stains don't matter. Stains don't matter. Yeah. Yeah. They said that you have to, if you wash something, you have to remove it until its three qualities, its three traces are gone. The three traces are smell, taste, and color. Right? Scent, taste, and color. So that would be the general guidelines. They said that unless you cannot remove it, you can't remove the smell, you can't remove the color, then until water flows through it, clear. So you would go until it's clearly water is just clearly clear. There's no tint at all to the water. Okay. So how we want to approach these things is I want you guys to kind of think about yourselves as as faqih students, scholars, trying to break this down. Okay. Trying to don't rely on opinion you heard here, opinion you heard there. Try to think about it yourself and come to your own conclusion. And then we'll discuss the answers, because these are questions that are very common and we should be able to explain them to others. Okay, so number one, forgetfulness. So one, we talked about if they forget something, a wajib in their prayer, and what they do is they just simply make sujood sahu afterwards. And sujood sahu, the way you do sujood sahu is after your tashahhud, you say assalamu alaikum once. You go into two sajdas, you come back and you do your tashahhud again, and then you do the two salams after. That is the Hanafi madhab. Right? In the Maliki, there's a lot more details. Right? Even Akhtari is like ridiculous. Ridiculous. Maliki madhab is ridiculous when it comes to sujood sahu. It's so hard. Okay. No, you don't. You don't. If it's Fatiha and you make a mistake, so if you make a mistake that changes the meaning, like a major mistake, you leave something out, then you should, if you're standing, you just repeat it. Otherwise, you would, I think you would do sujood sahu. You do sujood sahu. So it's not, the rukn is reading, remember? The rukn is reading, period. So if you don't read at all, then your prayer doesn't even count. But the Fatiha is a wajib. It's a wajib for the first two rak'ahs. Meaning that if you mess it up or you forget it, then you can fix it with sujood sahu. It's a wajib. It's a wajib. The rukn is reading. The rukn is reading. It's a wajib. Yes, Saad. This can be confusing. I know it can be confusing between the rukn and the wajib. Yes, Saad.
Yeah, see, for sujood sahu, would you do, okay, so you're going to finish your tashahhud, you're going to say salam, one direction, the right side, and then do two sujood, come back to taslim, and then do the whole tashahhud again before saying salam?
You're saying, is that valid?
Is that how you would do it?
No, you do salam first, one salam, and then your two sajdas, and then you come back, you do your tashahhud again, and you do both. That is the correct way.
Okay,
Yes.
but so you would do tashahhud both times, the
Huh?
whole thing?
I said one sajda? I said one salam. I said one salam. Trying to get me, trying to catch me. Okay. All right. So, Bismillah. You ready? Okay, last one. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. ولا يفرقر أصابع قدوري. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. So they say disliked. Why is it disliked? It's disliked because it's distracting from the prayer. If you are completely focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're not gonna, you can't move, right? You're in the presence of Allah. So anything, any movement at all, how do you do that? Do you just think about it? Do you just, oh, well, okay, you said fingers though. Ideally, yeah, that's not like Makrooh if you just did that, but if you were to like really extend it and little, like if things happen without your intention, doesn't matter. But to intentionally crack your back or to like position yourself better or fix yourself, all of this is Makrooh. So ideally, you are completely ready before you pray, Allahu Akbar, and now that you're here, you don't move at all. So if something, like I said, if you're moving and then something just cracks, I can't help you. Like there's nothing. It doesn't break your prayer. But intention, like I said, intentionally, anything intentionally, right? So here, all these things would not break your prayer are Makrooh. I'm not getting it. Maybe you can explain to me. Maybe you can. Okay, so Allahu A'lam. Okay, so this is fiqh. This is fiqh. This is proper fiqh. So, if you were to do that intentionally to crack the back, that would be Makrooh. But if that happened without your intention, it wasn't break your prayer. So, that's the same reason like breathing intentionally on purpose is Makrooh. To be like, breathing heavily, that's what heavy is. If you're breathing a deep breath, that's different. Deep breath is not heavy breath, right? So deep breath, if you did that and your back cracked, then that's fine. That wouldn't be Makrooh because you're just breathing. Yeah. But we're talking about intentionally doing any action that, right, is not from the salah and could distract you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's Makrooh. That's the idea. Yes. That's fine. You just do it. It's fine. And there's differences of opinion. There's already difference of opinion within the Hanafi madhab, not even the Shafi'i madhab, about how exactly to do the sajdat sahu. Meaning, do you do it after one salam, two salams, before the salam? There's difference of opinion, but I mentioned the strongest opinion. Okay, let's get to these questions, discussion questions. So forgetfulness. One does not know. I want you to like pick a partner and discuss this with your partner. Or in this case, three. One does not know, or in that case, 3, 2, or yeah. One does not know how many rak'ahs they prayed. Let's say, one of you are praying, and you're like, did I pray 2 rak'ahs or 3 rak'ahs? And you genuinely don't know. Because obviously, if you're pretty sure you did one of them, then you would just follow that, right? If you're like, I'm pretty sure I did 3, like very sure, then you just follow 3. But you're saying, I do not know. I am completely blanking. If I did 2 or 3, I have no idea. It's 50-50. Complete empty scale, open scale. What do you do? All right? Discuss. Don't just look up the answer. Discuss. Well, you can, but think about it. That's it. Like, well, yeah, think about it by yourself.
You at least did 2. Yeah, at least did 2. So you go off the fact that you did two and you add one more. I see. No, you know that you're not. I'm saying it is a little.
I did too. You go to third of them or that's one.
Yeah. No. After the salah, it doesn't matter. You ignore it. In the salah. Unless you're sure you missed something. But we're talking about 50-50. If you are sure you missed something after the salah, you remake it. But let's say like after the salah, you're like, did I do 2 or 3? You just ignore it. Because your prayer is done. But we're talking about in the middle of the prayer. You pray, get up. Was that the 3rd or the 4th rak'ah? What do you do? You can redo it as many times as you want. You can pray as many times as you want. All right, Bismillah. We have our answers. We have a couple of these, so I want to get through these because it's going to open up discussions. So that's why fiqh is like a bomb. Like anything you say, boom, question. You have to be careful. You have to be very careful what you bring up. Okay, what do we have? What are our opinions? Yes. So you say redo the entire prayer. Okay, that's an opinion. Oh wow.
Like if you're completely unsure that's what. But like if you're doubtful from like 2 or 3 or 5, then you go to say for so like if it's 2 or 3, then you think you go with that you've done 2 and then you do 2.
Okay, all right. It's an opinion. Huh? We're going off of our own ijtihad right now. Ijtihad. We're not doing naql. Okay. Okay. Does everyone agree on that? To say we have one opinion that says remake the prayer. Who else says you should remake the prayer? Who else? Anyone else? In the prayer. No, you agree? In the prayer. Should you just finish your prayer and then say, I'm just going to redo it right away? Or should you, right? Obviously, you shouldn't break the prayer mid-prayer, but you should, you go down, assalamu alaikum, let me restart. Or do you do what they said? You follow the lowest, the lowest denominator? Or do you follow the higher denominator? Or, I don't know what else. Yeah.
Like you would take what you're certain about over what you're, so let's say, for example,
50-50.
Yeah, but let's say like you're doing 3 and 4. It's either rak'ah 3 or rak'ah 4, right?
Okay, good.
So you would do you didn't want to you're certain about that. So then you're certain that, but you don't know if you did 3. You're certain that it's at least 3.
Mhm.
You go 3.
Okay. Okay. These last 2 groups. FIFA, yeah. Okay. Okay, good. Great. Yeah. So you guys got it. Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Okay, we'll come to that. So let's do this first. The first masala is you're not sure, you follow what you're certain with. So you follow your certainty. If you know you did 2, you pray as if you did 2. But here's the key thing. After every rak'ah, you sit down. Why? Because you might actually be in the 4th. So you get up for the 3rd, you're not sure if it's 3 or 4, you might actually be in the 4th. And if you just pray as if it was 3 and you're actually in your 4th, then you skip the final sitting, which is rukn. Got it? So you have to sit after every rak'ah, you sit down, and then because you sat after every rak'ah, as Afifa said, you then do 2 sujood sahw. You guys got it. Perfect. Alhamdulillah. If you're behind the Imam, no. If you're the Imam, then yeah, you'd have to do this, right? Because everyone's relying on you. Second is doubt OCD. Someone has like lot of OCD in their, whether or not they pray the right amount of rak'ahs, whether or not they read the Fatiha properly, whether or not they have wudu, whether or not they broke their wudu in the middle of the prayer. What do you do if you have like serious OCD? Discuss. This is a very important question. Very important. Yeah. What do you do like if someone like in their prayer they have we're talking about like one example of someone like they just have one doubt. What if they have this every rak'ah they have a doubt? Right? It's like it's a problem. Every rak'ah they think, oh my God, did I pass gas? Did I pass gas? Did I read the Fatiha properly? Did I read the Fatiha properly? Like that's OCD.
Ignore it.
Oh, yeah. You like. Oh. It was good. You pass gas. You want to hear what you know you did.
Break your prayer. That's the Maliki method. The Maliki method is you don't count it unless you smell it. I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Oh, okay. All right, we came to a conclusion, kind of. What do you guys think, fattest group? Okay, so if you can ignore it, you ignore it. What if you have OCD, you can't ignore it?
No, it's like if it's a doubt or it's that you consistently have the same doubt over the same thing, and you have no certainty as to whether the doubt is true, then you go with you just need to get it there.
Yeah, so if it's a common doubt that you keep having, then you ignore it because you can't like you cannot remake it every single time, right? So it's like I know that at this time I always get the same doubt, or I always for some reason I always get a sensation that that one is like breaking their wudu, right? Passing gas. I always get this sensation. You ignore it, right? Because in that case you are going to never be able to pray. You're never going to be able to get through it, or it's going to significantly like delay your prayer or make it difficult. So you try your best to find solutions to this, such as delaying your prayer, or in that case, there's not really much you can do, but you would just ignore it. Now, what about the example of someone who has like OCD? Let's keep going. Yeah. Okay, what if you can't ignore it? Because OCD, it's like it messes with you. It'll jack you up. Like people who have like bad OCD, like they cannot keep praying. It's similar. Waswasa kind of talks about anything, any like doubt that keeps coming. OCD is a clinical problem. So, and that there's scales to that as well. But someone has like major OCD, like they can't even finish the Fatiha. They can't even finish the Basmala, right? Without Bismillah, Bismillah. They can't do that. Or when it comes to wudu or whatever it may be. So what do they do in this case? What does someone do with OCD? Yes. Yes. So the solution for them is that they always pray in Jama'ah. That's the solution. And if they pray by themselves, then they try their best just to like create markers that they can that will show them that they're doing it right. So like for example, they put an alarm on for their rak'ah, or they'll put on, right, so that when they hear the sound, they just go into ruku'. Or when they whatever, they have these little like tactics to try to like just like override it, but they do not. The idea is that you never listen to it. You never listen to it because then your prayer will never be accepted. You'll never get through your prayer. So you either have these tools if you're alone, but otherwise you always try to pray behind someone, and therefore you don't even have to say anything on the Hanafi madhab. You let them talk, read, and then you just go in the motions, and all you have to do is tashahhud at the end, and then that's it. So even if you don't, the imam will cover your prayer, and that's the best solution. So always trying to have someone with you. Okay. Next question is, who leads the prayer? So bunch of guys here, it's time to pray dhuhr. Says, who should lead? Who should lead? Oh, yeah, okay. We're not talking about someone's house. At someone's house, yeah. Okay, good. So at someone's house, they have the authority. They can choose. They actually get to choose, right? So they can either lead themselves or they can pick whoever they want to. But if it's like this scenario between you five, they say, أعلمهم بكتاب الله. What that means is the one who knows the most fiqh, not the one who has the nicest voice, not the one who's memorized the most Quran, one who knows the most fiqh. Why? The reason why is because they are going to be able to make sure the prayer is sound because they know all of these conditions. You have a huffaz and they make a major blunder, but they sound amazing, but they made this huge blunder, the prayer is invalidated. So the person who knows the most fiqh, maybe they've studied before, maybe they've done courses, everyone kind of knows. They said, فَإِن تَسَاوَوْا. What if they're equal? Then what? Then who knows the most Quran? Right? Then the one who can read the best. And actually, it's not about who knows the most Quran, it's the one who has the best tajweed. So the amount of Quran you memorize doesn't matter. Hafiz, not hafiz. Hafiz who has bad tajweed? No. Why? Because the tajweed can mess up the Quran, it can mess up the prayer. If you make such a bad mistake that it changes the meaning. So then you go from the person who has the most fiqh, then the person who has the best tajweed, then the person who has, they keep going. It's like ajib. The Hanafis, they went through this completely. That's the third condition is the one who is the most righteous. Then you go to the one who is the most righteous. So you say like, out of us, who is clearly the one who prays the most, who, is the most modest, is the most pious, then they would lead. And then if they're all equal, which is like very rare, then the person who's oldest. And if they're all the same, somehow. Then they said that if they keep going, then they pull lots. Yeah, so they would just pull like pencils. They're all arguing. They're all saying, I want to lead. They all have the same fiqh, the same knowledge, the same taqwa, and they're all the same age. So say, okay, let's get some pens and just pull. Whoever pulls the black pen or the white pen gets the lead. Yeah.
Like, there's always kind of like a initiative and like a desire to want it.
Mm-hmm.
But is there at any certain point, especially when you're going through these requirements, that one should take humility and be like, okay,
No. So this is actually a big question. People always, even like people who have knowledge will say, oh, like it's okay. I don't have to lead. No, please, brother, please lead, please lead. Even this person's like a jahil. He has studied nothing in his life, and he's not even covering his awrah properly. I'm saying, may Allah protect us. But that's the state. That's the state. No, that's not right. If you are the most knowledgeable of your friend group, you have to put yourself forward. You have to say, I should lead, not because I deserve to lead, I'm better than you, but because I study the fiqh, the rulings of fiqh, and I can make sure that our prayer is valid. Yes. No, they say, أقرأهم means tajweed. Amount of Quran, as long as you can have enough for your prayer to be valid, that's what they care about. Yeah, so if it's not Fard Salah, then it really is open. You can have kids lead you. You can have kids lead you. Sabi can lead you. A child can lead you in nafil prayer. So it doesn't really matter, right? But you should, but we're talking about Fard Salah, then these are the conditions. Like maybe if you're at like a convert, everyone's a convert, and you want, one of them knows a little bit of the, so even though you know way more than them, you don't want to encourage them. They know enough for the prayer to be valid. Fine, you can encourage, but in general, like we want to be careful when it comes to the fara'id. You just want to be you want to make sure you don't make mistakes. And if people don't know their fiqh, then they're going to make mistakes. So the main thing is the fiqh one. Really, after that, fiqh and tajweed. After that, whether or not they have more taqwa, whether or not they are older, like these things, these other kind of relative considerations, yeah, you just kind of go based off of the discussion and who wants to lead. If someone wants to lead, you let them lead. Why not? But if there's someone who is clear, and this is the same for someone who is like they're all both students. This one's a little bit more advanced. You can let the one who is a little bit less studied, lead. But we're talking about there are many cases where someone will have actually studied. They've taken a fiqh course, and they don't know anyone else has. But then someone will just come and say, "I want to lead." You say, "Okay, Allah, Bismillah." No, you should say, "I want to." No, you should say you should put yourself forward. And then you should say, "I've studied. I've studied." And if they say, "I've studied too," you say, "Okay, Bismillah." Like you don't have to argue, but you should always put yourself forward, not on your own basis, not for your ego, but for the protection of the prayer. And that's so there shouldn't be any of this like false humility coming in, like, yes, I've studied, I'm like a graduate, but I need to work on my nafs. Like, no. You should pray because you're guaranteeing that the prayer is valid. Yes.
Answered my question.
So if there's no one can help them, then so we're actually going to talk about this mistakes, but if they make a mistake in the prayer, for example, and no one can help them, then they just go to the next ayah. They just skip it. And if they don't know the next ayah, they just do ruku'. Or they change the surah, right? They're trying to read like a bigger surah, they mess up. Just go back to Qul Huwallahu Ahad. Just guarantee your prayer. That's it. And people in general, and we'll just do this now because I want to get through the time. But mistakes in general, people should only correct the imam if they are major mistakes. So like mistakes that change the meaning and whatnot. You shouldn't correct them for like their little gunnas or little fatha here or there, because that can distract them. So people are like, they're like just like labid mirsad, right? They're like waiting in ambush. As soon as they say, subhanallah, right? Like, come on. Let the imam have his time, and you should not correct him until he waits to be corrected. So the imam just continues and he doesn't realize that you shouldn't stop him midway. Tell him after the prayer, right? And you should only correct him if he waits. So he doesn't know, and then he waits, and then you tell him, right? Then you do iftitah. And that means that you're allowed that because it can be very stressful. You're leading the prayer, and then people are just like yelling at you from behind, and it can mess up your entire flow when you're trying to pray. So, yeah.
Someone like that will help check their prayers. Let's say they're praying and the imam gets up before he's like by accident an extra rakat, and that person beside him like brings him down, like bugs him down. In that case, does he have to do such or because it was corrected in that moment?
Good question. So there's kind of questions that we talked about that another sister asked about what happens if you like add rakahs at the end. So anytime you add something at the end of the prayer, if you have not done a sajda yet, you've not completed a full rakah, you haven't done a sajda in that next rakah, the extra rakah, immediately just go right back to where you're sitting, finish your prayer, and do your two sujood sahwi. Right? So in this case, yeah, they just pull them down, and they do the two sujood sahwi. But if they do a sajda they add a rak'ah to the prayer, a full rak'ah, the prayer is invalidated. And it actually turns into a nafil. So they would then add another rak'ah, and then it would become a nafil prayer. So for example, in Dhuhr, they added a fifth one, they did a sajda, they add another one, and it just becomes a 6 rak'ah nafil. They have to redo Dhuhr. Because you added a full rak'ah, and there's some more discussions about whether or not they've done the tashahhud or not and whatnot, but this is like the basic ruling, and you can learn the detailed rulings in a book of fiqh, inshallah. No. So all these little mistakes, especially makharij, you shouldn't correct them. And you should let them just go. Because they're not gonna mess up the meaning usually. And usually the makharij is like, it's very, they're trying. So, yeah. Go ahead.
Wow. That changes the
Yeah, but we're talking about usually what they mean by meaning is like the meaning becomes like impermissible. So like a wow or these things would be like, it might change the meaning, but very, very slightly. We're talking about like full-on changes. Like, they say like Iyaka na'budu, they say Iyaka ya'budu, or Iyaka, Iyaya a'budu, something like that. Or I worship myself. Like that, big mistake. So in general, and then so you would correct them, right? In that, yes.
Well, Imam was studying, instead of the kafirun, they say mu'minun. Then it's like, does that invalidate the prayer?
It wouldn't invalidate the prayer because they're already reading a surah, and they've already done the required amount of reading. Then it doesn't break the prayer. They can keep going. So the reason why people correct is because they want to make sure that you don't make mistakes, and because if you're reading a khatam, you want to make sure you're not making any mistakes in the khatam. But like if you were to make a big mistake, and then you just stop and you change it up, or you change the surah, it doesn't break the prayer, right? Because unless it's intentional, yeah. Mm. You can sit back down, do your tashahhud, and say Assalamu alaikum. If you already did your tashahhud, then if you get up and you sit right back down, then you just say Assalamu alaikum. Yeah. There's more details though. There's a lot in that one masala, because they're going to just make a difference between whether or not you did the tashahhud or not, and the ruling changes. So I'm kind of just giving a simplified version, but inshallah we can discuss it after class, or it'll come if we study this, inshallah. Yes.
Not in recitation, but in action. That the Imam made enough mistakes where this prayer is not.
If they do something that completely invalidates the prayer, then the prayer is done. You just walk away. It wouldn't break the prayer, right? Because they can always just fix it with a sujood sahwi. But if they do, unless they literally break the prayer, right? So like major mistakes such that the prayer is completely invalidated, yeah, prayer is done. So you just walk away, or you just say Assalamu alaikum, you start again. You're not going to stay in it. Like someone like the Imam starts coughing, like talking in the prayer. Then that you would say, Yani, we're not even praying anymore. Yani, it doesn't matter. Right now, if the Imam, okay, mistakes. So the next question, we'll go back to transgender, is changing Imams. Was there a question here? Okay, changing Imams. If the Imam breaks their wudu in the prayer, then they pull the person behind him. This is why the person that are right behind the Imam, they should be knowledgeable as well. They should not, they should not be children. They should be people who can lead the prayer well. But the Imam can pull them forward. Now what happens, this is a question, what happens if one were to break their wudu in prayer? What's the adab of leaving? You know this? Yes. Did it? You cover your nose. Why? Some people think that you had a nosebleed. Unless you're Maliki and they say, no, it doesn't count. Bleeding doesn't break your wudu aslan. Malikis are tricky, but if you just cover your nose and then you walk away so that people don't, right, accuse you or it's not embarrassing anymore for you. Now, if the Imam prays and he realizes that one of the conditions of the prayer were not met before he started praying, so he broke he didn't have wudu, he had to make a ghusl, he wasn't facing the qibla, he thinks he wasn't facing the qibla, awra was showing, anything at all, the conditions are broken before he starts the prayer, he has to inform everyone that his prayer did not count. You can't just let it be quiet. You can't just be like, oh, snap, I didn't have wudu. Okay, like no, you have to go tell everyone, by the way, the prayer didn't count. I broke one of the conditions of the prayer. Please make your prayer again. Because al-imam al-damin, he's responsible for the musallun. Yes.
If you start with someone, that would be great.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Last two questions. Yeah. No, you pull someone. You pull someone forward. You pull someone forward. Now, and the reason also why you would show your nose is that when you turn around to leave, if you're in a packed lines, if you just turn around and there's nothing on you, people are going to look at you weird. They might not move. They might not move. Usually, though, if you turn around like this, they will move out the way, right? Because they're not going to know if he's bleeding. Let him through. Let him through. They said there's a condition like, what if someone is in a situation where there's actually having people do this, like they break their wudu and then they will pull someone forward, or they break their wudu and then they just they feel so embarrassed that they don't want to break it. They just act as if they're praying. Let's say this is like someone, maybe not the imam, because that's a big problem, but like there's someone in the prayer. They just like act as if they're praying, but they don't have wudu. You can't do this, right? It's a big problem. And the Maliki madhab is actually kufr. It's actually disbelief to pray without wudu. So you have to be very careful, because in one madhab, it would take you out of Islam if you did that. Maliki madhab, right? We're talking about, so I'm mentioning that just for fa'idah because it should be avoided completely, right? You just turn around, act as if your nose bled, and you leave the prayer. Yeah. Yeah, it's considered like mocking the prayer. Like, bringing down the hurma of the prayer. Like, how dare you act as if you're in the prayer and you don't even have wudu. So it's considered kufr in the Maliki madhab. It's an akhtari. Okay. Make-up prayers. Okay, we'll talk about that last. Before this, what do you do if you're I brought this up because we're in a Western college. There's a transgender. I actually mentioned this because I'm going to a Muslim, I'm getting a master's, and in my Muslim program, there's a transgender hijabi. It's a guy, right? But transgender hijabi, right? So he tries, whatever. They tried to pray with the woman and whatnot. How do you do this? They can't. They cannot pray with the men or the woman. Why not? Well, because if they're praying with the men, right, that's a problem. It's as if she's a woman, and she thinks she's a woman, and he thinks she's a woman. He's whatever, and he acts like a woman. So it's fitna. They can't stand with the men, and they can't stand with the woman. Why? Because they're men. It's actually a man. So you can't stand next to another woman and pray, right? Because they can't even touch aslan, and you're praying next to each other. That's a man. So what do? They are given their own row in between the men and women. And now you guys know, as MSA, you have a transgender Muslim, you would say, this is your row. You have a perfect middle row, all for yourself, right here in the middle. You make them feel special. And then, no one's prayer is fine. Yeah. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So this includes the khuntha, which is like an actual, like someone who has like mixed body parts. They're born with it, or they mutilate themselves. Or it talks about people who heavily resemble the opposite gender. This is also the case for like young boys, young men, they said, who like resemble women. Like they might actually like look like a woman as a young man. Like al-amrad is the word. They would have their own line. Why? Because it would be a fitna. Like if you're praying, there's a guy and he looks like a woman, like you think it's a woman, that's a big fitna in the middle of the prayer, right? You're trying to focus on Allah. So they would have their own row. It doesn't mean that, I mean, the woman in my master's is she's like considers herself devout. She does, so that it depends, right? This is a masala, like, because a lot of times it has to do with mental illness in many cases. And it has to do whether or not they are saying what they're doing is valid and part and fine, it's not haram, or they just think they're a man, or they want to be a man in that case, or they want to be a woman. So it doesn't always necessitate that they're a disbeliever just because they transitioned or whatnot. And in that case, you have these questions that come up. And they still want to pray, they still want to do everything, but they think they're the opposite gender. This happens. It's like a mental illness in that case. So what do? You have to accommodate them, but without compromise. So you'd put them in the middle row. Okay. Now, finally, the final question is make-up prayers. How do you make up your prayers? So let's say someone misses a prayer, misses 2 prayers, 3 prayers. If you miss a prayer, until you miss 5 prayers, up until 5 prayers, you have to make them up in order. And if you were to pray before you made them up, your prayer would not count. So if you miss Fajr and Dhuhr comes in, you can't pray Dhuhr. You have to pray Fajr first and then Dhuhr, and you have to do it in order. Right? Now, once you have missed more than 5 prayers, more than a full day of prayers, now the tartib follows. So now there's no order and you can make them up whenever, however you want. Ideally trying to make them up as soon as possible. But let's say someone they missed a month because they, whatever it may be, they were like not practicing really. If they go back and they want to make it up, they don't have to make those up before the next prayer, and they can make it up however they want. They can do their Fajrs first, all of their Fajrs, and then all their Dhuhrs, all their Asrs, it doesn't matter. We're talking about until 5, you have to make it up in order before the next prayer. That's really important. That's why I'm mentioning this, because a lot of people don't know this. They'll miss their Fajr, and then they'll just pray Dhuhr. You can't do that. Right? Can't do that. Yes. Mm. Then you make a educated estimate, and you give more, you give extra. So you're saying like it's between 20 and 30. 30. Right? Not 400, right? You keep it relative to your circumstance. You try to calculate it to the best of your ability. Yes. Like that's not possible. Because you can calculate it by years. So it's not possible you don't know how many years you weren't praying. Or you weren't, like, it's not possible. Because you're only alive for so many years, and you only became baligh for so many years. And they would just make a big guesstimate, yeah. Just to be careful. Yes, Saad.
See, in the case where you miss like 2 prayers, like Fajr and Dhuhr, and let's say you're about to miss Asr, should you, even in that case, like let's say if you were to make up your Fajr and Dhuhr, you would miss Asr, what would you do in that case?
In that case, you pray your Asr first, and then you would pray your Dhuhr, your Fajr and Dhuhr again, and then your prayer would still be fine. It'd still count. Because of the time. The time was so tight that you had to sneak it in. Yes. You can make it up whatever, but you have to try to make it up as soon as possible. No, you can't. You do your Dhuhr, your Fajr, Dhuhr, and then if you can join the Jama'ah, you can. If not, you miss it, and you just pray by yourself. Yeah. Yes. You can. Yes, you can. Okay. You can do nafil prayers. You can do qada. But ideally, you don't do anything. Ideally, you don't pray in the heavily makruh time because it's makruh. So you wouldn't even do anything. You would just you would wait. And there are short periods of time. So there's plenty of time in the day to make up your prayers. All right, alhamdulillah. So I know we have endless questions. The idea of today was just to kind of break down as I mentioned, the conditions, the arkan, the pillars, the wajibat, the obligatory acts, and then that which invalidates the prayer. So now, inshallah, you can pray and you know that your prayer is sound. And then, inshallah, on your own, you can learn the sunnahs, the recommended acts, that which is disliked. And I encourage every one of us to consistently learn fiqh, right? To consistently always try to learn more fiqh. It's not going to harm you. It's only going to help you worship Allah better. So in every thing, but today we have, alhamdulillah, completed the fard ayn of the salah, meaning that every one of you had an obligation upon you to know how to pray properly. And if you didn't know something that we covered today, you no longer have that obligation. It's been covered, alhamdulillah. And that's why that was the intention of the class, as well as to answer any of the other questions that usually come up and discuss them a bit. SubhanAllah, I know time goes by very quickly with fiqh, so I thought we'd be able to get through a lot more, but this is better. It's better that we had these questions. You guys could ask everything, then to go over through the book. Inshallah, as I said, we can maybe, inshallah, if there's another course that we do or a fiqh book, we can cover in significantly more detail, inshallah. Any final questions? Yes. You can. You can, but you should not delay Maghrib. It's makruh to delay Maghrib. Yeah, you can pray. It's not makruh, but you should. If you have the choice, you should just pray Maghrib right away. Right? Pray Maghrib as soon as possible. Yes. Can you pray before Maghrib? Technically, can you pray before Maghrib? Or is it like makruh? Okay. Any final questions? Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك جزاكم الله خيرا